על כל אלה שמורנה לי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקר, על המר והמתוק, על נטע הכור נטוע, אל תשכח את התקווה, השיבני ואשובה אל הארץ הטובה. מרשרש אילן ברוח, מרחוק נושר כוכב, משאלות ליבי בחושך מרשמו. עכשיו אנא שמור לי על כל אלה ועל אהובי נפשי, על השקט, על הבכי ועל זה השיר, על כל אלה, על כל אלה שכבר לי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקר, על המר והמתוק, על נטע הכור נטוע, אל תשכח את התקווה, השיבני ואשובה אל הארץ הטובה.
שאימא בהנה יפה וצעירה, אז הבעל גבעה בנה לבית. חלפו העתידים חצי ועברה, וטלטלים הפכו שיבה בינתיים. אבל על חוף ירדן כמו מאומה לא קרה, אותה הדומיה וגם אותה התפאורה. חורשת האקליפטוס, הגשר הסירה, וריח המלוח על המים. חורשת האקליפטוס, הגשר הסירה, וריח המלוח על המים. בשביל הנה יורדת ענת התינוקות, הם בירדן ישכשכו רגליים. גדלו הילדים וכבר למדו לשחות, ובני הנעורים חותרים בשניים. אבל על חוף ירדן כמו מאומה לא קרה, אותה הדומיה וגם אותה התפאורה. חורשת האקליפטוס, הגשר הסירה, וריח המלוח על המים. חורשת האקליפטוס, הגשר הסירה, וריח המלוח על המים. מעבר לירדן רמו התותחים, והשלום חזר בסוף הקיץ. וכל התינוקות ראו לאנשים, ושוב על הגבעה הקימו בית.
הייתי בפריז גלויות של נוף יפות, תמונות בזיכרוני עפות, כמו בעד של מצא לכל לך שיר מזמור גם צריכי המגדלים בירושלים בסמטאות השוק הצבעוני גגות הרעפים של גבעתיים הניבטים מבעד חלוני את האביב בתל אביב את סבתי ואת סבי את החלה ואת נרות שבת את ים המלח מימיה הכחולים של הכנרת והרקיע התואם מעט והרגשת הבית המוכרת בתוך אורכי זורמת כמו חשמל הרי גליל והשומרון הפרדסים שבשרון וילדים בגן המושבה את הכרמל ואת הים אחד אחד ולאת כולם תמיד פורצים אומרים ברוך הבא שלום לך ארץ נהדרת עבדך דל נושא לך שיר מזמור גם אם לעתים נודד אני על דרך מה טוב לנדוד אך טוב יותר לחזור
Okay, Shabbat Shalom everybody, and welcome to this week's World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study. I am, of course, Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im, and here we are. This week we are going to be studying, let's try that, we're going to be studying Parashat Eikev. Let me just hide this. Which is, that's going to be Deuteronomy 7:12 through 11:25. So basically 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, about 4 chapters. It's, average size. So we'll try to get it done. Usually my experience by now has been that if it's this large, then generally you don't get it done. But so what? We don't have to, there's no test after the study. We get done as much as we get done. And what we don't. And that's just the way it is. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of tangents and a lot of diversions into other parts of the Tanakh, which is what I love. It really gives us a chance to explore other parts of the, show that one instead, other parts of the Tanakh as well. And that's what I love. So a couple of things, just administrative notes, I guess. I am trying to work on. I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I would like to start another Torah study during the week, and what I think I'm working on right now is the idea of maybe doing a couple of times a week, maybe early in the morning. Well, early in the morning where I am. I don't know what it'll be. Let's see. It might be in the middle of the night if you're in the United States, but it doesn't matter. They're all recorded. And the idea of these Torah studies would be, so the Shabbat study would be, Parashat HaShavua, would be the portion of the week, which is great. That really allows us to go through the Torah again and again and again and again over the years. We've been doing this now for, well, let's see, probably about 3 years. I started with Hakham Yaakov ben Yisrael, but then he dropped out. So I've been doing it, I think, on my own for about 2 years now. And so that gives us, the Torah, of course, is the core of Judaism, is the core of the Israelite religion, and if you want to call it a religion. And so that's important that we go through again and again and again and again. We hit that core again and again and again. And I think the weekday studies would be different. They would be topical, right? So we take a topic such as, I don't know, marriage in the Torah, or the role of the ger, or something historical like, the attack of Sancheriv. They call him Sancherib or something in English. I can't remember. The king of Assyria on Jerusalem, as is spoken about in I guess that would be Second Kings, if I'm not mistaken, and Chronicles. So things like that, and I'm trying to work on it, and I will give details. Other things that are in the works are that I'd really like to. I don't know when it's exactly going to happen, but I would really like to start establishing a Karaite community in Israel, a true Karaite community, quote unquote. Maybe that's a little bit of a arrogant statement, but I really do think the Egyptian Karaites have gone off the derech. They've gone, they've compromised too much with the rabbis, and their movement is almost half rabbinical and half Karaite. So something that, in my eyes at least, would be a little bit more pure. I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but hopefully. And I guess I'll give more details when the time comes. So, at any rate, that being said, let's dig in. We are going to be starting in Deuteronomy chapter 7, and let me share the screen appropriately. Share screen. Window. Twitter. There's a bunch of me. And let's see, that should now be sharing. So last week we didn't do the Torah study because I was on vacation. We were up in the center of the country, and now we're back. So, but we missed a lot of good stuff. I studied the Parsha on my own. Amazing stuff. Deuteronomy's, action-packed. I mean, it's not a boring moment in Deuteronomy, quite frankly, right? So let's go back. So our Parsha starts here in verse 12, Eikev. Here's the word Eikev, right? So we know that the Parshas are named usually after the first significant, when I say significant, the first non-common word in the Parsha, as is the case here. But let's just go back a little bit, just to get a little bit of perspective, and we'll start in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 1, okay? And just to even get a little bit more perspective, as we mentioned 2 weeks ago, right, Deuteronomy is basically Moshe's farewell speeches. That's basically what it is. And as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, this first speech, there are 3 main speeches. This first speech, or this first sermon, or this first, I don't know what else you would call it. Let's go with speech, oratory, or this first oratory is takes place in 40th on the first day of the 11th month. So this is, and let me just think this out for 1 second. Right. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that what I said a couple weeks ago was correct, but it was. So this is, we know that the Israelites enter the land of Israel after 40 years, at the end of the 40th year, the beginning of the 41st year, they actually enter Gilgal. This is spoken about in the book of Joshua. They enter Gilgal on the 10th day of the first month of the 41st year, and then they bring the Passover sacrifice a couple of days later. The manna stops the following day on the 15th of the first month, and they begin eating of the fruit of the produce of the land of Israel on the 15th of the first month. So, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, just to put this in perspective, Moses, the book of Deuteronomy starts only a couple of months before Israel enters the land of Israel. So a lot is going to happen in these couple of months. It's the 11th month, right? First day of the 11th month. There are usually 12 months in a biblical year, sometimes 13 if the year is intercalated. That's a fancy way of saying if there's a leap month added. But generally there are 12 months in a year. So this means 2 months, basically 2 months, and to be exact, 2 months and 10 days before the Israelites enter the land of Israel. The entire book of Deuteronomy therefore spans only about a little over 2 months. And I think we made our spreadsheet last time to show exactly how much each book spans. Where did I stick that? Let's see, 400 years, journeys, Jethro, tabernacle, reason, interesting commentators, translation. I don't know. Maybe I didn't. I thought I did a scripts, numbers. I don't know where I put it. At any rate, it doesn't matter. So the point is that the entire book of Deuteronomy only spans about 2 months. Everything that happens in the book of Deuteronomy, it's important to keep in perspective, this is basically Moses's, I won't say deathbed because he's not on his deathbed and he doesn't have a deathbed. He goes up to the top of Mount Nebo and is basically put to death by God there. But it's his farewell speeches, and a lot is going to change for the people of Israel over the next couple of months. They're still in the wilderness. They're in the plains of Moab. We just recently had the entire story regarding Bilam, who was called upon by Balak to curse the Israelites and ended up having to bless them instead. And so that's where the Israelites are. They're in the plains of Moab, right near the Jordan River, right on the other side of the Jordan River, about to cross over the river. And Moses gives his farewell speeches, and then he's going to die. So within the next 2.5 months, the entire book of Deuteronomy is going to take place. Moses is going to die. Joshua is going to take over the leadership of the people of Israel, and the Israelites are going to cross the Jordan River. There'll be a splitting of the Jordan River. Most people don't remember that. They remember the splitting of the Red Sea, but the Jordan River also splits to let the Israelites into the land of Israel. So leaving the land of Egypt, the Red Sea splits. Entering the land of Israel, the Jordan River splits. And then the Israelites are going to enter into the land of Israel on the 10th of the first month, as is spoken about in Joshua chapter 5, I believe it is. And then they are going to bring the Passover sacrifice, start eating off the land, and then soon after they'll attack Jericho. That will be their first attack within the land of Israel. So all of this is going to happen. Well, not the Jericho part, but all of this is going to happen with Moses dying, Moses giving his farewell speeches, blessing Israel, Israel moving across the Jordan, traveling across the Jordan, entering the land, the manna stopping, Joshua taking over. This is all going to happen within the next 2.5 months, less than 2.5 months. Okay, so it's always good to keep that in perspective, what we're talking about when we're looking at the book of Deuteronomy. Okay, so that being said, let's go back to where we are supposed to be. And just a quick recap. Well, no, we don't have to. Let's just go directly to where we're supposed to be. Okay, so we're in Deuteronomy chapter 7. I'm going to switch over to the Hebrew. If you know biblical Hebrew, great. Follow along with me in the biblical Hebrew. If not, follow along in your favorite English translation. Or whatever language you prefer. And as I said, our parsha really starts here in verse 12, but we're going to start in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 1, just to put it in perspective. So, here we go. Any questions, any comments before we begin? No? Okay, if you have, just type them in. I will try to answer them, or at least relate to them. So, we are in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 1. Ki yavi echa Yahweh Elohecha el haaretz asher אתה בא שמה לרשתה, ונשל גויים רבים מפניך, החיתי, הגרגשי, האמורי, הכנעני, הפריזי, החיווי, היבוסי, 7 גויים רבים ועצמי ממך. Okay, so when Yahweh your God brings you into the land, which you go there to, they usually translate this as inherit, to take over basically, to dispossess, or to possess, right? To take over basically from the inhabitants. Winashal, and they usually translate this as cast out, and will cast out goyim rabim, many nations, and here we see the word goy. In modern Hebrew or Yiddish parlance, a goy means it's kind of almost a derogatory term for non-Jews, but in the biblical Hebrew, a goy is just means a nation, a people, and in fact, the word goy is used many times referring to the people of Israel. So in this case, it's talking about the nations that will be expelled from the land. So goyim rabim, many nations, mipanecha, from before you, from before your face, literally. And then it goes through and lists some of the nations. We always get different lists of the nations, but this is the typical list: the Chiti, the Hittites, the Girgasites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Okay, some of these you may have heard of, some of these you maybe haven't. The Jebusites, for instance, are in possession of Jerusalem, which was called Salem or Shalem before the name was changed by the Israelites to Yerushalayim or Jerusalem. Was a Jebusite city that was conquered essentially by the head of David's army, Yoav ben Tzruya. Okay, so Shiv'a goyim rabim atzmi mimecha, 7 nations that are larger and more powerful and greater than you. Okay, so that's God. I was listening to actually a Christian pastor. No, I'm not a Christian, not in any way, shape, or form. Never have been, never will be. Have never pandered to the Christians like some other Karaites do. No names need to be mentioned. But sometimes I do like to listen to various talks of all types. And this guy that I was listening to, actually, he focuses mostly on biblical archaeology, but he shoves a lot of sometimes he'll shove Christian stuff in there. So he happens to be a Christian pastor. But one of the interesting things he always says is, and it's obvious, it's true, but sometimes it needs to be said again, is that one of the things that characterizes Yahweh, the true living God, the God of Israel, the only God, the God of all of humanity, is that he can and does make the impossible possible. That is his characteristic, right? He makes the underdog rise up to the top. Mikimi me'afardal me'ashpot yarim evion, which is Psalm Mikimi me'afardal. He raises up Me afar dal. Afar is the dust or the dust heap. They sometimes translate it as dal, the poor person. So he raises the poor person up from the dust heap. Ashpot yakim evyon. And ashpot is the dung heap. Yakim, again, is to cause to rise. He will raise up from the dung heap the evyon, the downtrodden person, or again, the poor person. So this is what Yahweh does. This is what our God does. He makes the impossible possible. He takes the underdog and he makes them the winner. He takes those who are faithful to him and loyal to him and who are good people and puts them eventually on top and takes his enemies and destroys them and puts them on the bottom. We see this throughout the entire Tanakh, and I'm sure many of us have experienced this in our lives. Okay, verse 2. Yahweh Elohecha lifanecha wahi kitam. I should always point out that all of these little marks that you see, I'm not talking about the vowelization marks, the vowel marks, but all of these other marks are basically punctuation marks. They call them cantillation marks, but they're really punctuation marks. And one of the big ones to always look out for is this. If you see under this letter here, I'm not going to be able to highlight it because it's very hard to highlight a single letter, but under this word, right there you see a little wishbone looking thingy that's called an etnach, and that basically serves as a semicolon. Most verses in the Tanakh can be separated into two parts, separated by semicolon, and this little wishbone looking thingy, the etnach, is the punctuation marker that basically says end of the first part of the sentence and the beginning of the second part of the sentence. It's very important because it allows all of these marks, these cantillation or these punctuation marks, allow us to parse the sentence according to how the Masoretes understood it or inherited it. So what was my point was unatatam Yahweh Elohecha lifanecha v'yikitam. Semicolon. Okay. Nitatam Yahweh Elohecha lifanecha. Yahweh will give them literally before you, but basically means he'll give them up to you. And you will slay them. You will destroy them. You will, how do we translate it here? Conquer them. Okay. Lakot means to beat down or to slay or to destroy. Not destroy, maybe beat down. Ahrim otam. Lo tichrot lem brit, lo techanem. So what should you do? Tachrim. Achrim is usually translated as, oh God, what's the usual English translation they give, which I don't like particularly. 1 second. They translate it as utterly destroy here, but that's not good either. They usually say, I can't remember what they usually say. But lahrim basically means to set aside for destruction. Okay? In modern Hebrew, lahrim means to confiscate. So if I remember for a while I taught school, I taught junior high school and high school for a year or two in Israel. And if some kid was speaking on his phone, on his cell phone, we would have to lahrim the cell phone. We'd have to confiscate the cell phone. But really what it means is to set aside for destruction. And believe me, there were plenty of times where I wanted to take the cell phone and destroy it, but I probably would have got fired. So I didn't do that. But lahrim in biblical Tanakh means to set aside for destruction. It's essentially what it means. Okay, so ahrim tachrim otam, and we have repetition. Repetition, as I say, at least once every Torah study, I would say, always means emphasis or emphasis. So achrem tachrim means, and they usually translate it as you will certainly, or you shall of surety or surely destroy them. So achrem tachrim literally means you will destroy them, right? The emphasis, the repetition means emphasis, just like we have in English. That kind of structure still remains. So if it's very hot out, we might say it's very, very, very hot, expressing the same idea. The repetition means emphasis. Okay. So you will certainly, you will of surety set them aside for destruction, meaning you'll completely destroy them, basically. Lo tichrot lahem brit, you shall not, tichrot literally means to cut, and a brit is a covenant, so you shall not cut a covenant with them. You shall not make any kind of peace agreements, any kind of treaties with them. Velo techanem, and you shall not have any mercy on them. You shall not be merciful towards them. So God is really, he is sick and tired of these people. Okay? So what should you do? Once again, destroy them. Most definitely set them aside for complete destruction. Do not make any kind of treaty, any kind of peace treaty with them. And do not have any mercy on them. Seems pretty cruel. And for those who, I'm not sure what the right on and wow is referring to, but thank you, Whitey boy. Basically, you know, how can we say this? God is really pissed off with these people, and rightfully so. And I hear too many times people say, "Oh, look how cruel God is. He wants to destroy nations. He's telling them to destroy all these people. Even in the case of these nations, the babies and the animals are supposed to be put to death." Okay, what did the babies do? What did the animals do? Right? Why is this fair? And okay, you can have a long philosophical argument about that. But the fact of the matter is, let's start from the beginning. These were not nice people. These were nasty, disgusting people. And Yahweh gave them hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years to repent and change their ways. And they didn't. They got worse. And then if you think about some of the things they did, let's see if I can bring this. Let's see if I can play this. Okay, let's see if I can find it. Let me find my little Christian pastor guy. And I will play you something just to give it a perspective, because it's important to understand. Let's see, how am I going to do this? Go to history. No, not peach fritters or South Shore bar pizza. One of my favorite channels, by the way, is Chef John, if you know him. Good Samaritan. I think it is, yeah, it was Hymnon Valley Tour. Let's see if I can find this. And this is a great channel. Again, it's infused with a lot of, with some Christian stuff, but well worth it. Really, Shalom Suriel. Really well worth it. This guy really focuses on biblical archaeology. He goes to different places in Israel, and he gives these tours from these places, and he's just a really nice, kind of humble guy. Yes, he's a Christian, but oh well, you can't win them all. I just kind of ignore those parts and stick with the rest. But let's see if I can find it where he speaks about it. I have to find. Let's see. If I can't, we'll just skip. Wait, I think that might be it. Wait, maybe not. Hold on. 1 second. 1 second. If I can't find it very quickly. Oh, there it is. I think that's it. Yeah. So let me just share this. So his channel is called Holy Land Site. Again, I warn you, he is a Christian, so you're gonna have to put up with some of the Christian stuff. I'm not into it all, but there's a lot of good on that channel because he really focuses on biblical archaeology for the most part. Okay, so at any rate, let's see if I can share this. All right, so I've got to go present, stop screen, present, share screen, Valley Tour, share, and let's see if that worked. Looks good. Bring this up. So, and let's see.
Statues of a man with a bull's head. Each image had a hole in the abdomen and outstretched forearms that made a kind of ring.
Here we go.
One of the reasons.
Let's start here.
Sacrificed their children to the false gods of Molech and Baal in the Hinnom Valley. Leviticus 22 says, "You shall also say to the sons of Israel, any man from the sons of Israel or from the aliens sojourning in Israel who gives any of his offspring to Molech shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones." In this area, they would offer sacrifices to Molech. And of course, that's what the Canaanites did. And then when the Israelites inhabited the land, they were forbidden to follow the practices of the false gods. However, slowly but surely, they fell into the worship of these false gods of the land. And that's why God brought judgment upon them in the form during the period of the judges. Then he sent prophets to them. Then he finally would deport them, the northern 10 tribes, to Assyria. And then the southern tribe of Judah, which included Simeon and part of Benjamin, then they were deported to Babylon. Now, what did this worship of the false god Molech entail? This is really going to be gruesome, and I'm sorry to share this with you. And it's one of the reasons why God was so angry with the Israelites, because they offered their children in sacrifices to this false god Molech. It is believed that idols of Molech were giant metal statues of a man with a bull's head. Each image had a hole in the abdomen and outstretched forearms that made a kind of ramp to the hole. A fire was lit in or around the statue, and babies were placed in the statue's arms or in the hole. When a couple sacrificed their firstborn, they believed that Molech would ensure financial prosperity for the family and future children. They believed that this false god Molech would then bless them. So just the contrary of what they thought. It was a custom to beat drums and play music loudly. Some believe this was done in order to drown out the baby's screams from reaching the ears of their parents. Now, what did worship to Baal entail? Baal worship was rooted in sensuality and involved ritualistic prostitution in the temples. At times, appeasing Baal required human sacrifice, usually the firstborn of the one making the sacrifice. So with its pagan history and burning sewer stench, Jerusalem's Hinnom Valley and Kidron Valley serve as a vivid metaphor for both the Christian and Jewish concept of hell. By Jesus' time in the New Testament, the Greek translation of Hinnom Valley was
Damn it, I forgot to turn off the mute. That's why I should never turn it on. Oh, God, my mistake. My mistake. Damn it. I hate when I do that. Oh, all right, let me backtrack. I don't even know. All right, it was since the video. Geez, sorry about that. I should never put on the mute. I put on the mute so that it doesn't matter. Okay, let me say. God, I hate when I do that. All right, let me say what I even forgot the whole thing. Okay, I'll try to reiterate what I was saying. Okay, give you the stop. Basically, what I was saying. God, there was a lot that I was saying. I'll try to say it again. I was trying to say that it's a misnomer to think that Yahweh, the God of Israel, is in somehow a no sound after end. Can you guys hear me now? You guys hear me now? Hello? Sound check. Hello? All right, I'll assume you can because I have the mute off. Okay? Let me just post. You can hear me now. Okay, sorry about that. I forgot to turn the mute button off. So as I was saying, it's just a complete misnomer to say that the God of that we've heard many times that Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, is a cruel, unforgiving, mean God. But we see when we look at what these nations were doing in the land of Israel, they were doing depraved, sick things like sacrificing their own children in fire to the god Molech, engaging in all kinds of sexual depravity in the temples of Baal, of the various Baal gods, and other sick and depraved stuff. And what I was saying before, and I think this is where I was on mute, is that we know that Yahweh gave these people, he didn't just come along and say, oh, I just feel like, I'm in a bad mood today, I'll just destroy these people. He gave them hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years to repent, and they did not repent. They did not change their ways. He didn't just wake up one day and said, these people are gone, go in Israel and attack them. He gave them hundreds of years. And what's the proof? If we go back to Genesis chapter 15, and as I mentioned when I was on mute, this is what's called the Brit Ben Abitarim, Bitarim, usually translated as the covenant of the split pieces or the covenant of the split animals. This is Abraham. This is Yahweh speaking to Abraham in the land of Israel, and he says, we'll go back here, Genesis chapter 15, verse 12. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then Yahweh said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, speaking of course, about Egypt, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there, speaking about Egypt. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. And we see this explicitly in Exodus chapter 12, that they asked silver and gold of their neighbors, and the neighbors gave them, and so Israel left Egypt with a great amount of wealth. You, however, this is God speaking to Abraham, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. So this is already hundreds of years before the Israelites enter the land of Israel. It's about 400 years before, because I think the count of 400 years actually starts from here. That's a different story. It's about 400 years before the Israelites enter the land of Israel and start to destroy and start to laharim, to set aside for destruction, to utterly destroy the nations that were living in the land of Israel. So this means that already these people were sinning. They're already doing horrible, disgusting things, such as sacrificing their children to Molech, such as sacrificing humans to the various Baal gods, engaging in all kinds of sexual depravity in the temples of the Baal gods, and you name it, they did it. Spilling blood, incest, all kinds of other sexual depravity, murder. These were not nice people. And so when Yahweh goes ahead and eventually has the Israelites destroy them, it's not immediate. He is giving these people plenty of time to change their ways, and they did not change their ways. And by the way, the same thing happens to the Israelites in the end. They get into all of this stuff, and eventually Yahweh destroys them. Oh, he doesn't destroy them. Eventually he throws them out of the land. First, the Assyrians attack and conquer the northern kingdom of Israel. And then about 100 years later, 150 years later, the Babylonians come and do the same to the southern kingdom or to Judah. So the Israelites are not exactly exempt either. When they misbehave, they're also punished. The difference is, and this is the big difference, the difference is that Yahweh has a covenant with Israel that he will never completely destroy them. He does not have such a covenant with any of these other nations. That's why we don't have any more Romans. Well, I guess you can count the Catholic Church, but aside from that, and really the Catholic Church really is the extension of the Roman Empire. That's essentially what it is. But there is no more Roman Empire. There are no more Romans. There's no more Greek Empire. There are no more ancient Greeks. There's a country called Greece today, but it's not the same thing. They don't speak the same language. They don't believe in the same ideas. They don't worship the same gods. There's no more Persian Empire. Yes, there's a country named Iran, which is full of Persians, but there's no more Persian Empire. There's no more Median Empire. There's no more Babylonian Empire. There's no more Assyrian Empire. There's no more Elamite Empire, and the list goes on and on. But there is an Israel, and despite the fact that Israel was reduced to a very small number and scattered throughout the world, it was never destroyed. And that is the fulfillment of the promise that Yahweh makes to the children of Israel, that if they sin, they will be punished, they will be thrown out of the land, they will be exiled, they will be scattered all over the world, but they will not be completely destroyed. That's the difference between what happens when other nations sin and when Israel sins. Israel has a covenant, has a brit, a covenant, a treaty. Treaty is the wrong word. A covenant with Yahweh that Yahweh will never completely destroy the Israelites. Hold on for 1 second, please. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. So that's the difference. And why is this? What is this difference? Because Yahweh, it says why. Yahweh loved Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so he made a promise to them that their descendants will be numerous, that out of the loins of Abraham will come kings, that their descendants will be great in number eventually, and through their descendants, all of the people of the earth will be blessed. And that was the covenant that Yahweh made with the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that he again made with the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt. So that's the difference. Yahweh, or Israel, has an eternal promise from Yahweh that they will never be destroyed. If they sin, if they start doing the same things that these other nations do, they'll be severely punished. They'll be made to be small in number. They'll be thrown out of the land of Israel. They'll be scattered among the nations where they'll be punished and tortured by the other nations, as has happened throughout history, but they will not be completely destroyed. The other nations, if they sin, they will be and have been completely destroyed. There are no more Romans, there are no more Greeks, there are no more Assyrians, there's no more ancient Persian Empire, Median Empire, the list goes on. But there still is a people of Israel, and the covenant says that eventually Yahweh will forgive the people of Israel. They'll repent, they'll return to Yahweh, and then Yahweh will ingather them throughout all of the nations, bring them back to the land of Israel, and there they will be fruitful and multiply. And we see this happening today. There are now 6 million Jews living in Israel, which actually makes it the largest population of Jews in the world. That's the first time that that can be said since, I'm not sure when, probably since the destruction of the first temple, that the largest population of Jews in the world is in Israel. Second largest is New York. Still, I think. So, yes, let's get back to Deuteronomy. Any comments, any questions before we go on? Whitey boy, Phil, Marianana, McNana, anybody? Okay, so let's go on here. So don't anyone tell me that Yahweh is a cruel, mean, jealous, evil God who just likes destroying people. No, just the opposite. He's merciful, he's loving, he's kind, and he gave these people 400 years to get their you-know-what together, but they didn't. They still kept on doing these sick, depraved things, and eventually they were destroyed. And if the United States doesn't change its ways, then the same thing will happen to the United States. As sure as night follows day and day follows night, it will happen to the United States of America. No doubt, because there is no eternal covenant between the United States of America and Yahweh. So if they continue in their depraved ways, if they continue to deviate from the ways of Yahweh, from the ways of the Torah, at least those parts that apply to all nations, and there are many parts of the Torah that apply to all nations, and I actually think there are far more parts of the Torah that apply to all nations than generally people think, and certainly the rabbis. If you want to compare it to the rabbis have this idea of the 7 Noahide laws, where they have 7 laws that apply to all the nations, and all of the rest of the laws apply to only Israel. I actually think the number is much greater than that, and I'll give an example. I'll give the example of kashrut, or eating kosher food. I think the basic idea in the Torah of eating kosher food applies to all of the people. It's true that the Israelites are commanded explicitly in the Torah not to eat what's called unclean, or I like to call them disgusting foods, such as, I don't know, snakes, rabbits, shrimp, lobster, all of these creepy crawly disgusting things. But idea really applies, this idea of clean and unclean foods really applies to all of the people of the world, and it would be probably a good idea for the other people to also follow it. And in fact, some cultures do, such as the Muslims, right? The Muslims don't eat pig. Some of them don't eat seafood. I think it's the Shiite that don't eat seafood and the Sunni that do, but it's more complicated than that because there's so many different communities. But they, for the most part, they have an idea of kosher and non-kosher foods, which of course they call halal. U.S. is doomed, in the words of Mike Rome. Yeah, he's right. So, so yeah, I think there's a lot of the Torah that actually applies to all of the people, much more than the 7 Noahide laws as the rabbis think. Okay, let's go on. Verse 3. ולא תתחתן בם בתך לא תיתן לבנו וביתו לא תיקח לבנך. So you shall not intermarry with them. And this is speaking specifically about the 7 nations there. This is not a ban on marrying anyone who's a non-Jew. That's a long discussion, but can get into that another time. This is specifically a ban on marrying any of or intermarrying with any of these nations. And why? Well, it's going to say exactly in a second. So let me translate this verse. Lo titchaten bam, do not intermarry with them. And again, we see this little wishbone thing, the etnach, semicolon. Bitcha lo titen livno, do not give your daughter to their sons. It's in the singular, but really it means do not give your daughters to their sons. Ubito lo tikach livnecha, and do not take their daughters for your sons. Okay, so don't intermarry with them. Did we cover all the possibilities? Don't give your daughter to their sons. Don't give your sons to their daughters. That's the same as don't take their daughters for your sons. don't take their sons for your daughters. That's the same as don't give your daughters to their sons, and don't take your daughters. I think it covers all of the possibilities. So no intermarriage with them whatsoever, right? And why? It's nothing. It's nothing. Well, it is something personal against them, and I guess actually that's the whole point. Ki yasir et bincha me'acharai ve'avdu Elohim acharim, because they will cause your son to stray away from me, ve'avdu Elohim acharim, and go worship other gods. V'hara af Yahweh bechem wahish mitcha maher, and Yahweh will become infuriated with you, and he will destroy you very quickly. So there's a specific reason why the Israelites were told not to intermarry with any of these people, and the reason is because they are going to cause them to go worship. They're going to go cause them to worship foreign gods, and that's going to be the end of them. They leave Yahweh, and that is going to be the end of them. Yahweh will then come and destroy the Israelites. So this is really a continuation of the previous verses where it says, Lo tichrot lahem brit, don't make any treaty with them, no peace treaties, no covenants with them, don't intermarry with them, lo titraten bam. In other words, is to be no intermixing with these people whatsoever. Rather, achrim tachrim otam. Rather, you should set them apart, set them aside for total destruction. You put them aside, you fence them off, and then with the intention of totally destroying them. There's to be no treaties with them, no intermarriage with them, nothing. Because if you do start interacting with them, if you do start making treaties with them, if you do start intermarrying with them, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to leave Yahweh, you're going to leave the ways of the Torah, and you're going to end up becoming like them. And that's exactly what happened, because the Israelites did not conquer all of the land. They left some of the original people in the land, and those people ended up doing exactly what the Torah warns against here, tempting them towards worship of foreign gods. The Israelites eventually got very much into this worship of foreign gods, and of course the Israelites were then eventually conquered, exiled, and the temple was destroyed. You guys know the story. Okay, so you know the thing. So ולא תתחתן בם בתך ולא תיתן לבנו ביתה ולא תפח לבניך כי יסיר את בנך מאחריי ועבדו אלוהים אחרים. And here it's interesting. Well, it really, again, the way the Torah works is, well, I guess it's working both ways here, right? לא תתחתן בם בתך לא תיתן לבנו ביתו לא תיקח לבניך. So the verse 4, let me just translate it. Ki yasir et bincha me'acharai, because they will cause your son to deviate or to leave me, navdu Elohim acharim, and to go worship other gods. And then God is going to get blah, 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 is going to get mad. So here, this is kind of a detail, but it doesn't say that when your daughters, when you give them to the sons of the indigenous, I don't like to use the word indigenous, the original people there, that's going to cause the idol worship. No, because once a daughter is given away, then she's basically out of the nation, because everything really goes by the male line, the fatherly line. So if the sons take the daughters from these other nations as wives, then these daughters of the other nations now essentially become part of the nation of Israel. They're in the nation because everything goes by the son, not the daughter. It goes by the male, not the female. And then it's going to be like having a fifth column. It's going to be like having a mole in Israelite men to start worshiping these foreign gods. We saw exactly the same thing with the story of Bil'am and Balak. Eventually, when Bil'am realized that he could not curse Israel as Balak wanted him to do, then eventually what he did is he bring in the nuns, if you know that one from the Mel Brooks Inquisition. At any rate, he brought in the nuns. He brought in the Midianite women, and those Midianite women tempted. They used their womanly wiles to tempt the Israelite men, and their ultimate goal was not to to have sex with them. Their ultimate goal was to tempt them into worship of foreign idols. In that case, the Baal Peor, one of the Baals, and that's when Yahweh started the plague in Israel. We saw this just a couple of weeks ago, right? So that's exactly what happened. The women tempted the Israelite men, and it wasn't about sex. It was really about tempting them towards idol worship, towards worship of foreign gods, with the explicit intention of having Yahweh get mad at the Israelites and remove his protection from the Israelites, because the Moabites and the Midianites saw this huge amount of Israelites, these 600,000 Israelite men, or men of war age, of warrior age, encamped in the plains of Moab, right outside Israel, waiting to come into Israel, and they were terrified. They said, "This is a big problem. We've got a whole bunch of people who have just killed Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings, and they're now going to come in and they're going to wreak havoc in Israel. So we've got to stop these people somehow." And so the idea that Balak came up with was, the king of Moab came up with, was to call in this this guru Bilam and have him curse the Israelites. That didn't work, and then we had the whole thing with the Midianite women tempting the Israelites, using their womanly wiles away from worship of Yahweh and into worship of foreign gods. Okay. So why did the rabbis say it goes through the mother? That's anti-Torah. Because the rabbis, they do many things that are explicitly against the Torah. The rabbis say that the beginning of the year is the first day of the 7th month, when the real beginning of the year is the first day of the 1st month. The rabbis do things that are 180 degrees opposed to the Torah. That's a long story. Why? And I've spoken about it other times. I don't want to get into it right now, because we'll go off on a long tangent. But yes, the rabbis, I think, deliberately try to not just oppose, but 180 degrees oppose the Torah. And I think it was the Karaite. It was either Kirkasani or Kumisi. It may have been both of them, but I think it was Kirkasani who compares. No, I think it was Kumisi who compares the Rabbinites to Yerovam, to Jeroboam. Jeroboam was the first king to break off from to break the united Israelite kingdom under Saul, David, and Solomon, into the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Rehoboam was the son of Solomon. He ended up being the king of the southern kingdom, basically of Judah and Benjamin, and then the northern kingdom under Jeroboam broke off, and they started their own kingdom, and it remained so until both kingdoms were eventually destroyed. The northern kingdom by the Assyrians, and the southern kingdom by the Babylonians about 100, 150 years later. So what did Jeroboam, when he, and this is explicit, oh gosh, I'm sorry. The cat finds it. Come here, sweetheart. I'm sorry, baby. Come here. Come here. Johan, come here, sweetheart. Come here, baby. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. New little guy. So, okay, so go over there. Go. So Jeroboam, when he gained control of the northern kingdom, he realized that he had a problem. The place of worship at that time was already Jerusalem. Solomon had already built his temple in Jerusalem. He built his palace and he built his temple in Jerusalem. And that was a central place of worship for all of Israel in Jerusalem. And Jeroboam realized he had a problem. If all of Israel was still going to go to Jerusalem to worship Yahweh, then that was going to basically defeat the purpose of starting this breakaway kingdom of Israel. They were all going to end up going right back Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, and he would not be successful in his in his splinter group, his splinter kingdom of Israel. So he came up with the idea, or the idea he came up with was to set up places of worship. He set up two places of worship, one in Bethel and one in Dan. Bethel is right near Jerusalem. It's about, I think, maybe 10 miles away from Jerusalem, a little bit to the north. It's also the place that we just saw in Genesis 15, where Abraham had the Brit Ben Abitarim, the covenant of the split pieces. It's also where Jacob had his famous dream with the angels going up and down the ladder. So he made two new places of worship. So Bethel, which is right near Jerusalem and is in the southern part, basically the southern extremity of his new kingdom, and then Dan, which is in the northern extremity. Dan is all the way up near Mount Hermon. It's all the way on the northern, near the current northern border of the state of Israel. Oh, low battery. I'm gonna have to plug it in a second. So he set up these two places of worship, and he built huge golden calves. We've heard of that before. Think of Exodus chapter 17, is it? 19? And no, 19, blah, blah, blah. No, afterwards, 21. I can't remember. Around there in Exodus. And he set up these two golden calves, one in Bethel and one in Dan, one in the southern extremity of his kingdom, right near Jerusalem. So it was kind of almost like a sister city to Jerusalem. One all the way up in the north in Dan, and you can visit these places today. Bethel has been excavated, although I think it's in quote unquote Palestinian territory, and it's fallen a bit into disrepair. And then you can visit the city of Dan, Tel Dan. You can visit all the way up in the north, right near the northern border of Israel, and you can actually see they've excavated what they think are the platforms where Jeroboam set up these golden calves, and he said to Israel, "These are your gods, Israel, who took you out of the land of Egypt, took you out of Egypt." The same thing that Aaron said to the Israelites when he made the golden calf, when Moses, back in the book of Exodus, when Moses delayed coming down from the mountain. So this was Jeroboam's solution, or his device, his scheme to prevent the people of his kingdom from rejoining the southern kingdom. He changed the places of worship from Jerusalem, which had already been chosen by Yahweh. We see that in the end of the second book of Samuel, and at least it's implied in the end of the second book of Samuel, and had already built the temple there. The Ark of the Covenant was already there. So he set up these two new places of worship. One right near Jerusalem, kind of as an anti-Jerusalem, or as a sister city to Jerusalem, and the second all the way in the northern border in Dan, and set up two golden calves there. And so these Israel these are your gods who took you out of the land of Egypt. So basically, the people of his kingdom. The cat, it's falling all over. Okay, hear that in a second. And by doing so, he wanted to prevent the people in this new breakaway kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, from going back to Jerusalem, from needing to, or from wanting to, or having to go back to Jerusalem, which was in the kingdom of Judah, to worship their God. And because he feared that if they did so, then this new breakaway kingdom would fail, and the people would again just be going back to Jerusalem, and so it wouldn't be a successful split. Let's put it that way. Okay, so with that being said, let me just take a. Yes, he's still sucking my ear all the time. Okay, so let me just take a break for 5 minutes because I've got to plug in. I'll put a bit of music on, and hopefully I won't forget to take the mute button off. But we'll be right back. I'll put some music on.
הייתי בפריז וגם ברומא, ראיתי את 7 פלאי תבל, בקוטב הצפוני וגם דרומה, אך אין מקום כמו ארץ ישראל. וכמו גלויות של נוף יפות, תמונות בזיכרוני עפות, כמו בעד עדשה של מצלמה. בתרמילי אותן אשא לכל מקום בכל מסע, קטעי פסיפס מתוך תמונה שלמה. שלום לך ארץ נהדרת, עבדך דל נושא לך שיר מזמור, גם אם לעתים נודד אני על דרך, מה טוב לנדוד אך טוב יותר לחזור. צריכי המגדלים בירושלים, בסמטאות השוק הצבעוני, גגות הרעפים של גבעתיים, הניבטים מבעד חלוני. את האביב בתל אביב, את סבתי ואת סבי, את החלב ואת נרות שבת, את ים המלח מול אדום ואשת לוט צופה לסדום, ואת הקיץ בואכה אילת. שלום לך ארץ נהדרת, עבדך דל נושא לך שיר מזמור, גם אם לעתים נודד אני על דרך, מה טוב לנדוד אך טוב יותר לחזור. מימיה הכחולים של הכנרת, והרקיע התואם מעט, והרגשת הבית המוכרת, בתוך אורכי זורמת כמו חשמל. הרי גליל והשומרון, הפרדסים שבשרון, וילדים בגן המושבה, את הכרמל ואת הים, אחד אחד ואת כולם, תמיד קורצים אומרים ברוך הבא. שלום לך ארץ נהדרת, עבדך דל נושא לך שיר מזמור, גם אם לעתים נודד אני על דרך, מה טוב לנדוד אך טוב יותר לחזור. ידיים, עוד לא בניתי כפר, עוד לא מצאתי מים באמצע המדבר, עוד לא ציירתי פרח, עוד לא גיליתי איך תוביל אותי הדרך ולאן אני הולך. עוד לא אהבתי די, הרוח והשמש על פניי, עוד לא אמרתי די, ואם לא עכשיו ומתי. עוד לא שתלתי דשא, עוד לא הקמתי עיר, עוד לא נתתי כרם על כל גבעות הגיר, עוד לא הכל עשיתי ממש במו ידיי, עוד לא הכל ניסיתי, עוד לא אהבתי די. עוד לא אהבתי די, הרוח והשמש על פניי, עוד לא אמרתי די, ואם לא עכשיו ומתי. עוד לא הקמתי שבט, עוד לא חיברתי שיר, עוד לא ירד לי שלג באמצע הקציר, אני עוד לא קרתי מים, לא באתי את חלומי, עוד לא אהבתי עתידיי, הרוח והשמש על פניי. אז לא אמרתי די, ואם לא עכשיו ומתי. ואף על פי שאת פה ואת כל כך יפה, ממך אני בורח כמו מגן. רציתי לעשות, את בטח תסלחי לי. שלמי, עוד לא אהבתי די, ברוח והשמש על פניי. עוד לא אהבתי די, ואם לא עכשיו מתי.
בהיאחזות הנחל בסיני, המון דברים יפים ראו עיניי, כמו למשל חיילת יחיפה, וצמדה מוטלת על כתיפה, ובחצר היו החיילים, צולים דגים גדולים על גחלים, המון דברים יפים ראו עיניי, בהיאחזות הנחל בסיני, שם כל השרות והדליות והרינות פסעו לאט בתוך סדירת כזוארינות, עם כל האור וכל הפלאי אשר ראיתי בעיניי, אשר ראיתי בעיניי. בהיאחזות הנחל בסיני, אני ממש שפשפתי את עיניי, כשראיתי מעשה כשפים, ספרי שירה קטנים על מדפים, שירי רחל וכוכבים בחוץ, כמו לפני שנות 1000 בקיבוץ. אני ממש שפשפתי את עיניי, בהיאחזות הנחל בסיני, שכל השרות והדליות והרים עשו לאט בתוך סדירת כזוארינות, עם כל האור וכל
Okay, we are back. We are back with the Torah study, the World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study. I am Hakham Melech of the World Alliance of Qara'im, and we're up to Deuteronomy 7:5. So, Ki'im ko ta'asu lahem, Ki'im ko ta'asu lahem, miz bechotehem titotsu, umatzevotam tishaberu, wa'asherehem tiradeon, upisilehem tisrefun ba'esh. So you shouldn't make a covenant with them. You shouldn't intermarry with them because they're going to tempt you into idol worship of their gods. What should you do? Ki'im kota asalehem. But this is what you should do to them. Mizbachotem titotsu. You shall smash their altars to bits. Umatzevotam tishaberu. And their matzevotam, they usually translate as standing stones or pillars. Let's see how they translate it here. Sacred pillars, they translate it here. Tishaberu, you shall break down. Wa'asherehem tiqadde'on, and their Asher trees, the Asherah trees, you should chop down. Upisilehem, and their carved images, you shall tisrafun ba'esh, you shall burn in fire. So basically, instead of, or you shouldn't make a covenant with them, you shouldn't intermarry with them. Rather, this is what you should do: destroy every element of their sickening, disgusting idol worship. That's what you should do. Destroy it completely. Okay, and we have different types. So mizbechotehem, a mizbeach is a sacrificial altar from the underlying word zevach, which means to slaughter. So it's an altar where animals are sacrificed. But of course, these are altars to foreign gods. You shall smash to bits. Matzeva is usually translated as a standing stone. Here they translate it as a sacred pillar. It's how can you? No, picture is always worth 1,000 words, right? Let's see if we can find it. Sacred pillar. There you go. That's an example of a sacred pillar. Oops. Hello. Do something. So they're kind of these pillars that are set up for idol worship. Sometimes they pour oil over them. They anoint them. They become places of worship. They become places of that are revered. And in fact, let's see here. Let's learn a little bit about sacred pillars. There's Wikipedia. Well, this is not. Well, this is one example of sacred pillar. So here's an example. An Ir Minsul. Never heard of it before in my life. Let's learn together. An Ir Minsul, Old Saxon great pillar, was a sacred pillar-like object attested as playing an important role in the Germanic paganism of the Saxons. Medieval sources describe how an Ir Minsul was destroyed by Charlemagne during the Saxon Wars. A church was erected on its place in 783 and blessed by Pope Leo III, of course. Sacred trees and sacred groves were widely venerated by Germanic peoples, including Donor's Ark, and the oldest chronicle describing an Ir Minsul refers to it as a tree trunk erected in the open air. Let's see if we can go ahead a little bit. All right, we'll read one more paragraph. The Old Saxon word compound Ir Minsul means great pillar. The first element, Irmin, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So whatever, Old Norse, Yggr's horse is a cosmic tree from which Odin sacrificed himself and which connects the 9 worlds. 19th century scholar Jacob Grimm connects the name Irmin with Old Norse, etc., etc. Okay, it doesn't matter. Whatever. You guys get the idea, right? So that's kind of what a sacred pillar was. It's just this venerated site that is, it's not a place where, it's not like a sacrificial altar, but it's a place where one comes to worship these foreign gods. Okay, so you shall break them down. Asherehem, that's an asherah that's usually understood as a tree, a sacred tree, and a lot to say about the asherah. But again, I don't want to go off on a tangent here. So you shall chop them down. But these were basically trees that were also sacred objects. They often represented fertility because trees bear fruit. They represented the female gods, often Asherah. You can see with the Hebrew ending Asherah or the Semitic ending A usually means feminine, and in fact Asherah is a feminine word. So yeah, we won't get into it here, but that's the idea of an Asherah. So you shall chop them down. Pisilehem are specifically pasal is to carve. So these are carved images as opposed to masecha, as opposed to molten images that are made out of molten metal that are cast by pouring liquid metal. So these are carved images, and you shall burn them, implying that they're made out of wood. Burn them in fire. So you get the idea. Basically, destroy every element of their worship of foreign gods, their idol worship. Okay. Verse 6, Ki am kadosh ata Yahweh Elohecha, because you are a holy people, you are a holy nation to Yahweh your God. B'cha b'char Yahweh Elohecha. Li'ot lo ra'am sihula mikol ha'amim asher al pnei adama. B'cha b'char Yahweh Elohecha. God chose you, speaking to Israel. It was you who Yahweh your God chose. Li'ot lo ra'am sihula, to be for him a treasured nation. Sehula is usually translated as treasured. See how they translate here. A special treasure they translated here. Nikola Amim, among all of the peoples, Asher al Pnei Adama, who inhabit, who are on the face of the earth. So you're a holy nation. You're the chosen nation. Literally here it says, B'char Yahweh Elohecha. Yahweh your God chose you, made the choice of you to be a special, a treasured nation from among all of the peoples who inhabit the face of the earth, who are on the face of the earth. So you are to be different. You're not to be like these people. You're not to make covenants with them. You're not to intermarry with them, because you'll end up worshiping their foreign gods. Instead, destroy them. Destroy every last remnant of their idol worshiping cults. And you instead are to be a holy nation, a special chosen nation, who has a special covenant with Yahweh to do the right thing. Okay? So let's move on. Any comments, any questions so far? Okay, then let's go on. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to type them in, or you can come onto the Streamyard link and you can actually be on the air with me. Okay. Remember, this is still Moses. All of this is in the context of Moses speaking to the children of Israel in the plains of Moab, a little bit more than 2 months before they are to go in and conquer the land of Israel. Lo merubchem mikol ha'amim hashak Yahweh bachem. Why yivhar bachem ki atem hame'at mikol ha'amim. Okay, lo merubchem mikol ha'amim hashak. I'll just kind of have to paraphrase this a little bit, because if I go word for word, it's going to sound a little bit weird in English. But lo merubchem mikol ha'amim chashak Yahweh bechem. Yahweh didn't choose you or didn't desire you because you were the greatest in number, the largest among all the people, right? Like, it would be a logical choice. Oh, who am I going to choose to represent me? Oh, let's choose the Chinese. There's over 1 billion of them, right? They can really get out into the world and represent me. Or let's choose the Indians. I think there are over 1 billion of them as well. Now, there certainly are a lot near where I live. So, so that's not why Yahweh chose you, right? It would be a logical choice, but Yahweh doesn't go by the external appearance. Yahweh goes by what's in the heart. Because you are the smallest. You're among the smallest of all the nations, right? The smallest in size, the least amount of people among all the nations. Okay, so if that's not why he chose you, then why did he choose it? Ki me'avat Yahweh etchem hu mishamru et shvuah asher nishba la'avotechem otzi Yahweh etchem biyad chazaka uyiftecha mibeit avadim miyad paro melech Mitzrayim. But from me'avat Yahweh etchem, but because God loved you, because of God's love for you, mishamru et shvuah, and because, or from his keeping the oath, asher nishba la'avotechem, that he made to your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Hotzi Yahweh etchem biyad chazaka, did Yahweh take you out with a strong hand, uyiftecha mibeit avadim, and redeem you from the house of slaves, from the slave house, from the slavery house, no, from the house of slaves, miyad paro, from the hand of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. So that's why God chose us, because he loves us, speaking to Israel, because he loves Israel, and because he made a vow to the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who he loved and who followed in his ways to a T. That's why he chose Israel, not because we're the greatest, not because we're the greatest number among all the nations. Verse 9. וידעת כי יהוה אלוהיך הוא האלוהים, האל הנאמן שומר הברית והחסד לאוהביו ולשומרי מצוותיו לאלף דור. And now you know that Yahweh, your God, he is the real God. He is the true God. Well, I'll translate it literally. Yadata, and you know, or now you know, Ki Yahweh Elohecha, that Yahweh, your God, Hua Elohim, he is the real God. He is the only God. Ha'el Ne'aman, the faithful God, Shomer Brit, Wahesed Le'oavav, who keeps covenants, who keeps agreements, and who shows kindness Le'ohavav, to those who love him, U'leshomrei mitzvotav, and those who keep his commandments, Le'elef dor, for 1,000 generations. This, of course, should remind us of, let's find it. I'll go to the English for a second. How do I do stream? I'll send you the link, Mariana. I never, I think I usually send you the link now that we're in contact on Telegram. I usually send you the link. So here we go. And there it is. Okay, so, right, Exodus 20, let's find it. So, this is usually considered one second. So this is usually considered the second commandment. These are the 10 commandments. This is Exodus chapter 20. I'll just read the English. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in the heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, Yahweh your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation for those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations for those who love me and keep my commandments. So what Moses is saying here is basically a direct paraphrase, a direct quote of, of the 10 commandments, of the second of the 10 commandments. Okay, right, as it says here, Ha'el Ne'aman, the faithful God, Shomer Habrit, Wa'chesed, who keeps his agreements and shows kindness, Le'ohavav, to those who love him and to those who keep his commandments for 1,000 generations. And here, showing love to 1,000 generations for those who love me and keep my commandments. So this is Moshe deliberately, obviously, repeating the words of the 10 commandments, of the second of the 10 commandments. Okay. Umishalem l'shonao el panao l'havido, and who pays back those who his haters to their faces, l'havido, and destroys them and wipes them out. Right? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't you really like to do that? You would pay back your haters straight to their faces. That's got to be a good feeling. So that's what God does eventually. Lo ya'acher lisonao el panao yishalemno. So lo ya'acher, he will not delay lisonao to his haters. El panav yishalemno, he'll pay him back right to his face. He'll He'll punish him right in his face. Okay, he's not going to delay it. In other words, he's not going to delay it for future generations. But anyone who hates him, they're going to get the punishment. They're going to get it right back in their face. That's basically what this verse is saying. ושמרת את המשוואה ואת החוקים ואת המשפטים אשר אנוכי מצווך היום לעשותם. So therefore, you shall keep these commandments and these laws and these judgments which I command you today to do them. And again, this is Moses speaking to the children of Israel. So we see God is never speaking in the first person. Here, this is always Moses giving his speech. So, for instance, in verse 9, Yadata ki Yahweh Elohecha hu Elohim. You shall know that Yahweh, your God, he is the real God, the faithful God, who keeps his covenant, he keeps his agreements, and shows kindness to those who love him and those who keep his commandments for 1,000 generations. This is all Moses speaking. Moses quoting the 10 Commandments. Moses saying what God is like. This is not prophecy directly from God, and it's an important. What's going on here? And it's an important point to keep in mind that most of Deuteronomy, maybe all of Deuteronomy, most of Deuteronomy is Moses saying things, not Moses relating directly the words of Yahweh. Okay, and now we get up to the beginning of our parsha, of our weekly portion, and that is here. And here we have a peh. A peh means parsha ptucha. It basically means it's like a chapter ending in the Masoretic texts. Verse 12. והיה עקב תשמעון את המשפטים האלה שמרתם ועשיתם אותם ושמר יהוה אלוהיך לך את הברית ואת החסד אשר נשבע לאבותיך. Okay, and והיה עקב, and if you, or as a result of, or in the footsteps of, I think actually would be the perfect translations, in the footsteps of your tishma'un et mishpatim, of your listening to these judgments and keeping them and doing them, then ושמר יהוה אלוהיך לך את הברית ואת החסד. Then Yahweh will keep for you his agreement, his covenant, and he will show you his kindness, and he will show you kindness. Asher nishba lavotecha. I'm sorry, I'm going to rephrase that or retranslate that. V'shamar Yahweh Elohecha lecha et habrit. Let me translate it word for word. V'shamar Yahweh Elohecha lecha et habrit, and Yahweh will keep for you. Yahweh, your God, will keep for you et habrit. The covenant or the agreement and the kindness which he swore to your forefathers. In other words, if you do what God says, then God is going to remember the covenant. He's going to keep the covenant that he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And if you don't, then, well, we'll see what happens. That comes later in the book of Deuteronomy. Okay. Shabbat Shalom, Devorah Palm Tree. Okay. Verse 13. Wa'ahevecha u'verachecha wa'hirbecha. Semicolon. U'varech pri bitnecha u'pri adametecha di chanecha u'tiroshcha u'yitzharecha shigar lafecha. Okay, so now we get some blessings here. This is kind of a shortened form of the blessings, but we see them also in the end of the book of Leviticus and also later on an expanded form here in the end of Deuteronomy. But this is something that we will see a couple times throughout Deuteronomy. Okay, so what do we say in verse 12? If you, Israel, keep all of these judgments, keep all of these commandments, then Yahweh is going to keep the agreement and and show the kindness that he swore to your forefathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, verse 13. And he will love you. And he will bless you. And he will multiply you. And this is exactly the same word as we see in the famous verse, be fruitful and multiply, which already appears in Genesis 1, first referring to, I think it's the fish and the fowl before the blessing is given to humans. So there it says piru u rebu. Rebu, rav, means to become great in number, and here we have hir becha. So hir becha, he will make you great in number. Ibarach pri bitnecha, and he will bless the fruit. Right. So here we have piru u revu, and we have the same thing here. Here we have hir becha. He will make you great in number. He will multiply you, and here he will bless the fruit of your womb, of your bellies. Literally of your belly, but of course referring to the womb. So here we have be fruitful and multiply, or we have an expression of that blessing that we already see in Genesis 1 of be fruitful and multiply. Here, if I were to translate it using those same English words, so he will multiply you, and he will bless the fruit of your womb. So fruit and multiply. And I would say that this is a deliberate, again, the Torah is, as I always like to say, is extremely self-referential. It's always referring back to itself. We saw in the previous verse. No, not in the previous verse. In verse 9, that it's basically a quote, almost a word-for-word quote of the second commandment, Exodus 20 of the 10 Commandments. Here we have a reference already back to Genesis 1. He will multiply you, and he will bless the fruit of your womb. Be fruitful and multiply. Upri ad matacha, and the fruit of your land. And then we have diranecha tiroshcha v'yitzarecha. These often appear together. Diranecha is your grains. Tirosh is your wine. Sometimes we'll translate it as new wine. There's a grape juice brand in Israel called Tirosh. And it's not wine at all. It's just grape juice, so it's not fermented at all. Yitzarecha, yitzar is your oil, your olive oil. So those were the three main staples of ancient Israel and the ancient Near East: grain, wine, and oil. And actually, they play a big part in my diet today. Okay, yes, 10 Commandments. Well, it says Aseret Dibrot. So yes, 10 Commandments is not the correct translation. The 10 statements would be a better translation. Yes, it does say Dibrot, and that comes from the word davar, which means a word or a thing, but it's a dibra, which means more like a statement. So Aseret Dibrot would be the 10 statements. Okay, let's go on. Okay, Shgar alafecha wa ashtarot sonecha. This is a phrase which we've seen elsewhere, and I think they always appear together. Shgar alafecha wa ashtarot sonecha. And let's refer to our spreadsheet, our animal terms. I think. Okay, what was that? Do I have to reload? What's going on here? Do that. Okay, so where's our animal terms? Animal terms. Waiting for Google Docs. Animal terms. So we have to look for. So shkar alafecha. So alafecha they translate here as cattle, and tzon we know is flock. So alafecha, those are the two main types of animals that were kept: the herd animals and the flock animals. So, and herd animals are usually translated as cattle. So shkar, and okay, let's go to our thingy here. Let's find our alafecha. Where'd it go? Oops, one quick change here. I know I have it here somewhere. Actually, let me make this a little bit bigger so you all can see. Sheger Aleph. Okay, so here we go. Ashtarot. We know it's on this. Okay, so here we go. So Sheger, and this is this verse right here. Sheger is an offspring. It can be of any sex, and obviously with an offspring, it's young. And it can refer to any species or category. And I have here the note, usually followed by alafecha. In one case, behema. In Exodus 13:12, it speaks about the redemption of the firstborn. So shchar behema. Okay, so basically we have this phrase, shchar alafecha. Elef is cattle. Okay, always preceded by shchar. In Deuteronomy, in Judges 6:15, Gideon uses it figuratively to mean family, saying his is the poorest in Menashe. Okay, so alafecha. All right, no indication that it's related to 1,000. So here we have sheger is an offspring, elef is cattle, meaning bulls and cows, and then we have ashtarot. So here's ashdara. So that also means kind of like offspring, and that means the young, and appears only in the construct form of ashtarot sonecha, appears only in Deuteronomy, according to BDB, may be related to the same root as the family, the name of the fertility goddess, Astarte. Okay, so this is all notes that I took last year, but we get the idea. So we have this phrase here, and it's poetic, it's a blessing. So shchar alafecha means the offspring of your cattle, your cows and bulls, wa ashtarot, and the young of your flock. And this is classic. This is classic poetic structure in the Torah and the Tanakh. Actually, we've seen this many, many, many times. I've pointed out many times that we have this parallelism. So shchar is in parallel with ashtarot, and alafecha is in parallelism with tzonecha. So the offspring of your cattle and the young of your flocks. Okay, and often we can use this parallelism to discern or to elucidate the meanings of words if we don't know them. In this case, these words are already known. Okay, so but the fact that this is kind of your classic biblical poetic parallelism shows that this entire verse here, really starting from here, is meant to be more poetry than prose. So keep that in mind. Okay. So where were we? Okay, so now we have another very common biblical Hebrew construct, which is this entire phrase up to here is interrupted or interrupts this outer phrase. So really what it's saying here, so let me just read the rest of the verse. Al adama asher nishba la'avotecha letet lecha. Upon the land which he swore, which Yahweh swore, to your forefathers to give to you. And what is this referring to? This is referring to these first, really, I think it's referring really just to that. He will multiply you, or maybe bless and multiply you. He will bless you and multiply you. I really think it's just referring to hirbecha. He will multiply you on the land which he swore to your forefathers to give to you. So we have a very strange, what seems like a very strange sentence structure if we were talking about modern English, but in biblical Hebrew, it's actually very common, where we have an intermediate phrase from here to here, which interrupts this outer phrase. So again, let me try to parse this, and then we'll move on to the next verse. And he will love you, and he will bless you. Stop. And he will multiply you. And now we skip over to here on the land which he swore to your forefathers to give to you. And then in between that, we have, and he will bless the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your land, your grain, your wine, and your oil, the offspring of your cattle, and the young of your flock. Stop. And then we have this phrase again, which refers back to the beginning. So again, if I had more time, I would just draw it all out and maybe put it on a whiteboard, move it around, and all that kind of stuff. But the point I'm trying to make is that the sentence structure in biblical Hebrew is a little bit different often from the sometimes from the sentence structure often from the sentence structure in modern English, in that phrases can be interrupted by intermediate phrases, and then later in the phrase it goes back to modify the original beginning of the phrase, and you really have to pick it apart. And if you don't know what's going on, it can lead to, hey, Marianne.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you. I have a guest with me.
Okay. Who's the guest?
Do you want to see my guest?
Ferrets.
Actually, I've got multiple guests. But I have the mother. I have the mother and her children. Are you ready?
Let's see. I'm ready. Bring on the weasels.
Actually, no. It's the banana tree and her babies.
Oh, okay.
It's my banana tree.
Of course, because you're Mariana McNana Banana.
Hi.
Are you actually able to grow it? Are you actually able to grow a banana tree in upstate New York?
Yes, but it lives in the tub most of the time.
Lives in the bathtub.
Yeah.
Okay, and will it actually end up producing bananas?
I hope so. I've had it for a couple of years now. It's produced babies.
Oh.
Look, there's one baby.
Okay.
There's another baby. There's another baby. There's another baby. Mama.
Cool.
There's some
wow.
stuff from my garden. So yeah, here's my garden behind me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Sorry to interrupt.
Wow. That's okay.
Lots of stuff.
That's okay. I know you do. I know you're a big grower. Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. The bees are going crazy. Look at this.
That's a good sign when the bees go crazy.
Yes. Life is going. They're biting me too. Well, the wasps are, but the bees are not. So anyway, I don't want to interrupt your Torah study. It's really enjoying it.
All right. So I'll get back to Torah study. Feel free to chime in if you have anything that you want to add.
I appreciate that.
All right. I'm going to put you on mute. You can unmute whenever you need to. Okay. So let's go back. Okay. So let's see where we were. Let me close this out. Okay, verse 14, continuing this blessing, this poetic blessing. Baruch ti'eh mikol ha'amim, lo i'eh becha akar wa'akara uvimhem-techa. So blessed will you be from among all, or more than all of the nations, from among all the nations. Lo i'eh becha akar wa'akara, there shall be among you no barren man or barren woman, and also among your animals. Again, we see a difference in biblical Hebrew sentence structure, because if this were English, it would say, Lo yeh becha u vivemtecha akar ve'akara. There will not be among you or among your animals any barren male or barren female. But here it says, there will not be among you a barren male, a barren man, or a barren woman, and among your animals, right? So again, we see that the sentence structure can be a little bit different. Things can be broken up differently. Okay, let's go on. Verse 15. Wa'isir Yahweh mimcha kol holi, chol madwe Misraim ha'ra'im, asher yad'ata lo yasimam bach unitatam bechol sonecha. And Yahweh will remove from you any type or all sickness and all madwe. We've seen this word before. And they usually translate, let's see how they translate it here. Diseases, so kind of the same thing. So no sickness and no diseases. All of the sicknesses and diseases of Egypt, Qara'im, all of the bad, the horrible sicknesses and diseases of Egypt, Asher Yadata, which you know of. And not sure exactly what that's referring to. We could look at some commentaries, but my guess would be that when the Israelites were in Egypt, they this might be referring to some of the 10 plagues that were placed on the Egyptians, because some of them did involve conditions, right? Like skin boils. But I think more likely it's probably referring to just diseases that were floating around in Egypt, and Yahweh promising the Israelites that won't happen to them once they come into the land, or that won't happen to them in the land of Israel. I will get some commentary on that one to see what some of the commentators think. Lo yisimam bach, he will not place them upon you, unitanam bechol sonecha, but he will place them upon all of your enemies. We'll get back to that in a second. Let's just finish off this paragraph. Nechalta et kol amim asher Yahweh Elohecha noten lach, and you shall consume, literally eat, devour, I think would be a good translation. And you'll devour all of the nations, all the peoples, asher Yahweh Elohecha noten lach, which Yahweh your God gives over to you, gives unto you, right, for destruction. Lo tachos einecha alehem, your eyes shall have no pity upon them. V'lo ta'avod et Elohehem, and you shall not worship their gods, you shall not serve their gods. Ki mukesh ulach, because that will be a mokesh. Oh God, how do they translate this one in English again? Mokesh means like a I can't think of the English word offhand. It's in my head. I know the word in Hebrew, but the proper English translation is a mokesh is like they translate, I think, as a stumbling block usually. See how they do it here. A snare. There we go. So ki mokesh ulach, because it will be a snare or a stumbling block for you. In other words, it's referring back to what we saw before, that if you have mercy on these people and you don't completely destroy them, then you will end up worshiping their gods, and this is going to be a snare to you, right? This is going to end up causing you to go away from your God, from Yahweh, and then Yahweh is going to remove his protection from you because you've left him, so he'll leave you, and then you're going to have problems. Okay. So that's that. Let's get a little commentary on verse 15. This is Deuteronomy 7:15. Go to Robert Alter, as we usually do. Deuteronomy 7:15. Oops, sorry, Joshua. 1408. Okay. All right, let's get a little commentary here. So, all right, let's read through some of these comments. So this is going back to verse 1, cast off. That was the verb nashal. Okay, we don't have to talk about that one. Nations numerous and more mighty than you, and mightier than you. In earlier biblical accounts, he almost preternatural numerical growth of the Hebrew people stressed in the historical reality of the later 7th and 6th centuries, a writer would have been keenly aware that Israel was a tiny nation surrounded by large and powerful peoples. Okay. This is verse 2. You shall surely put them under the ban. That's those words, achrem tachrim otam, that we saw in verse 2. Right here. Achrem tachrim otam. Referring to that. The verb achrem implies both total destruction and solemn vow to carry out that grim purpose without taking prisoners as slaves and with no secular exploitation of the booty. Moshe Weinfeld calls the emphasis on herem, the man in Deuteronomy, utopian and wishful thinking. There is thankfully no archaeological evidence that this program of annihilation was ever implemented, but the insistence on it here reflects an agenda of absolute separation of Israelite and Canaanite populations for the purpose of preserving cultic purity. Okay, fine. You shall not give your daughter to a son. A moment before, the Canaanites were a plural them. But this characteristic easy switch from plural to singular is a way of focusing on the specific act of the individual Israelite about to marry off his daughter to a Canaanite son. Marriages, of course, were arranged by the families, not by the bride and the groom. Okay, so good comment there, right? The Tanakh will often switch interchangeably between plural and singular. He will make your son swerve. The antecedent is ambiguous. It could be the just mentioned son who would marry your daughter. It could be the singular generic Canaanite. Okay. And I think the rabbis make a big deal out of that one. We won't get into that right now. Just want to see that one for myself. It was 4. ולא תתחתן בם בתך, לא תיתן לבנו. תו לא תיקח לבניך, כי יסיר את בנך מאחריי. עבדו אלים אחרים. Okay. Yeah. Okay, this is my own edification. I translate this as because this will, but okay. Okay, their altars you shall smash. This is verse 5. The string of short clauses is a vivid instance of the powerful rhetoric of iconoclastic theology that informs Deuteronomy in quasi-poetic semantic parallelism. The statement moves from one verb of violent destruction to another, more intense one ending with the other consummation by fire of all pagan icons. So that semantic parallelism, that's the kind of poetic parallelism that we speak about a lot of times. And we see that here in verse 5. Okay. מזבחותיהם תוצאו, מצבותם תשברו, אשריהם תגעדון, ופסיליהם תשרפון באש. So that's all parallelism. This is parallel with this, is parallel with this, is parallel with this, and then shatter, break down, chop down, and burn in fire are all in parallel with each other. Okay. And a treasured people among all the peoples. It's verse 6 is a variant formulation of the phrase that appears in Exodus 19:5. The term for treasure, segula, is one that is used in other ancient Semitic languages to designate a relationship of privileged vassalage. Okay, so we said the Torah is very self-referential. We even saw a word-for-word quote just about from the second commandment of the Ten Commandments. And here, this is quoting Exodus 19. That's one chapter before the Ten Commandments. So we can go look at that for a second. So this is all right. Okay. So this is what you shall say to the children of Israel. And I'll just skip verse 4. And now, if you will certainly listen to my voice, and keep my covenant, keep my treaty, keep my agreement, then you shall be for me a treasure. That's that word segula that Robert Alter is referring to. From among all the people, because all of the world is mine. Okay, let's move on. Verb 8, this is talking about yiftacha. Let's find exactly. Right here, this verb, this word, wayiftacha, redeemed, I translated as. It's the way it's usually translated. Here, Robert Alter translates it as ransomed, which I actually think is a better translation. The verb is chosen for the liberation from Egypt because it is what one does to free a captive. In the event, God pays for the liberation not with ransom money, but with terrible acts of retribution. Nice comment. I like that. Verses 9 through 10. We mentioned that. This verse amounts to summarizing a paraphrase of the Revelation. Oh, verses 9 through 10. 1 second here. What's there? Okay. Yeah. But I quoted it from Exodus 20. But it also appears in Exodus 34 and Numbers 14. Okay. And in consequence of the relatively unusual Hebrew preposition, Eikev literally means on the heels of, and I translated it as in the footsteps of. So, but yeah, it's also a good comment. He picks up on the fact that the word Eikev is being used, which is a rare phrase in that context. And it's also, as I mentioned, this is the name of our parsha, and that appears right here. Eikev. Okay, multiply, bless the fruit. These terms hark back to the injunction in Genesis. Here, reinterpreted as a blessing actively initiated by God to be fruitful and multiply. That's pretty much what we were saying before. Grain, wine, oil, spawn, calvelings. Each of these 5 terms is not the common one for the thing it designates. While redolent, I have no idea what the heck that means. Let's look that one up. Every week I learn a new word from Robert Alter. Strongly reminiscent or suggestive of, names redolent of history and tradition. Thank you, Robert Alter. Now I can go past my SATs. Okay, while redolent of the concrete reality of agriculture and animal husbandry, each of these words is also the name of a pagan deity associated with fertility. So we mentioned in the case of, that's verse 12, is it? Ashtarot, which we translated as the young. Robert Alter translates it as the calvelings. I like that. But he's also, as we mentioned earlier when we spoke about that word, that it might be related to the god Astarte, where the name Esther comes from actually, and Ishtar I think comes from that same one. And Robert Alter is saying that all of these words actually are related to the names of foreign gods, and that I did not know. So let's see what else he has to say here. This usage is most evident in the exceptional Ashtarot. Tzonecha, the calvelings of your flock, for Ashtarot is transparently the plural form of Ashtoret, the Canaanite fertility goddess. In the anti-pagan polemic impetus of the Deuteronomic oration, the God of Israel supersedes all these agricultural deities as a source of fertility, reducing them to mere common names. Interesting. I like that. If it's true, he said this usage is most evident in the exceptional Ashtarot Tzonecha. And if you read between the lines of academic talk, which Robert Alter is basically an academic, I think what that says to me is basically there's no definite proof that any of these other words, and again that was Dagan, Tirosh, Yitzhar, and sheger, I think he's basically saying, or if you read between the lines, he's basically saying there's really no proof that any of those words are related to foreign gods. But he's pretty sure that the word Ashtarot is related to Ashtoret, and so therefore maybe these other ones are as well. When you read enough of these academic articles, these scientific academic articles, you kind of can perceive after a while, like read through the lines, because a lot of these academic articles will kind of say in certain ways what they don't know. And if you read enough of them, you can kind of read between the lines. So I think that's what he's saying, actually. All right, verse 18. And we haven't gotten up to that yet. So let's get back to where we were. And he doesn't even comment on verse 15. That's why we went to him in the first place. So he has nothing to say about verse 15. But okay, no big deal. Let's move on. How does it translate? I bet he translates 16 as devour. Let's see how good he is. He's pretty good. Yep, I knew it. Okay, so how does he translate Mokish? 16. Snare. Okay. So that's the end of that paragraph. This is a samech, Parshas Tumah. That's kind of like the end of a paragraph. If you see a peh there, that's kind of like the end of a chapter. And always keep in mind that the chapters in verses that we see in the Torah were only created much later. I think the first guy to do it was some guy named Stephen Kovney or something like that, if I remember his name correctly. And he was a monk in the Middle Ages. Stephen Kovney. No, it's a different Stephen Kovney. I don't know who made the chapters and verses of the Bible. Stephen Langdon. Cardinal Hugo de Sancto Caro is often given credit for the first dividing the Latin Vulgate into chapters in the real sense, but it is the arrangement of his contemporary and fellow Cardinal Stephen Langton in 1205 created the chapter divisions which are used today. Stephen Langton. Stephen Kovney. Where did I get that name from? Let's find out who he is. Stephen somewhere. American educator. Oh, that's where I did read that book many years ago. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Oh, he's a good guy. I like his stuff. Okay. I guess that was floating around in my mind. Okay, so right. Verse 17, new paragraph. Ki tomar belevavecha rabim hagoyim ha'ele mimeni echa ucha lahorisham. If you should say in your heart, rabim hagoyim ha'ele mimeni, these nations are much greater in number than I am. They have much larger amount of people than I do, than Israel does. Echa ucha lahorisham. How can I take them over? How can I disinherit them? Verse 18. Lo tira mehem. Zachor tiskor et asher asa Yahweh Elohecha leFar'o u'lechol Mitzrayim. Do not fear them. Semicolon. That's a little wishbone thingy. The etnach. Do not fear them. Do not have fear of them. Zachor tiskor, but rather, definitely or certainly remember et asher asa Yahweh Elohecha leFar'o u'lechol Mitzrayim. But you shall certainly remember what Yahweh did. Yahweh, your God, did to Pharaoh and to all of Egypt, right? So we already have a precedent. Don't worry about nations that are bigger than you. Egypt is much bigger than you. Egypt, you were their slaves. You were enslaved by them. They had you over the barrel. They had total control of you, and look what happened to them. So again, as that guy I mentioned before, likes to say that Yahweh makes the impossible possible. Which is, as I mentioned in other studies, the reason that it's considered such a, I don't know if I'd call it a sin, but not a good thing to count Israel. Whenever censuses are done, it causes problems. In the end of the second book of Samuel, when David does the census, when he counts Israel, then Yahweh punishes him. Yahweh brings to him a choice of 3 punishments. So when you count Israel, and usually a count of Israel really means a count of the males who are eligible or capable of going out to war. So it shows a lack of faith in Yahweh if you carry out a census of Israel. Sometimes the Israelites are commanded to carry out a census, the book of Numbers. That's why it's called the book of Numbers. And but it's considered not a good thing because it shows a lack of faith, because it shouldn't matter how many people are in the army of Israel if Yahweh is with the people of Israel. If Yahweh is with the army, it doesn't matter. In fact, we have the story of Gideon in the book of Judges, who was afraid that he didn't have enough people to win the battle. And in fact, Yahweh said, no, you have too many. And he whittled it down from 30,000 to 300. Again, exemplifying this idea that if Yahweh is with you, then it doesn't matter how many people you have fighting. It doesn't matter how many people you have in your army. Okay, so don't be afraid of these nations that are greater in number than you are, that have more people than you have in your population. Verse 19. Hamasot hagedolot asher ra'u anecha. The masot, the great trials that your eyes saw, waha'athot wa'amoftim wahayad ha'chazaka wazroa nituya asher hotziacha Yahweh Elohecha. Stop. Semicolon. And the signs and the wonders and the strong hand and the outstretched arm by which Yahweh, your God, took you out of Egypt. Ken ya'aseh Yahweh Elohecha lechol ha'amim asher ata yareh mifnehem. So, or the same, shall Yahweh, your God, do to all of these people asher ata yareh mifnehem, before whom you fear. So don't worry. Yahweh has your back. It doesn't matter if you're small in number and the other nations are large in number. If Yahweh did it to Egypt, if Yahweh took care of you out in the desert, then he can do this too. So do not fear them. So he shall also send the hornet upon them. And I don't know. This one has always been a puzzling one to me. We'll try to get a little commentary. Ad avod hanish'arim wa'nistarim mifanecha. Until those who remain and even those who are hiding are destroyed before you. So he's going to send hornets. Basically, it'll be like a plague of hornets that go in and go into all of the caves and all of the hiding places and I guess sting all of the remaining people to death. I don't think we have any evidence in the Tanakh of this ever happening. Let's see what Robert Alter says about that one. Verse 20. All right, we'll read what he says about verse 18. Honky? Mary Ann? I don't know who honky is, but your devices are connected. Let's get rid of you. Mary Ann, your devices are not connected, so get you out of there. Okay. Right. Robert Alter was saying, you shall surely remember what the Lord your God did to Pharaoh. Again and again in Deuteronomy, the Exodus story of the founding of the nation through liberation from slavery is invoked in order to exhort the people to confront their own frightening historical reality, threatened by overwhelmingly greater powers, most urgently by the Assyrian and then the Babylonian Empire. So he's, again, taking this secular view that the Torah was written much later. They are enjoined to recall the great narrative in which God's intervention enabled them to triumph over Egypt's imperial might. Hence, the contemporary relevance of these nations are more numerous than I, which surely goes beyond the immediate reference to the Canaanite peoples. Okay, well, that's kind of his secular point of view. The hornet, the meaning of the Hebrew term tzira'ah is uncertain. See the philological comment on Exodus 23:28, where it is suggested that it might be a supernatural agency, the smasher. Alternatively, since the verb at the beginning of the next verse, be terrified, reflects the same three consonants in reversed order, appears to play on the sound of tzira'ah, it might mean terror. Abraham ibn Ezra ingeniously identifies it as some kind of epidemic by relating it to tzara'at, which also has the root tsar, a contagious skin disease. Okay, that's interesting. So we've looked at Abraham ibn Ezra a bunch of times. He's an excellent, excellent commentator. Very, very good. I call him the anti-Rashi. Shabbat shalom, Daniel. Shabbat shalom. Okay, so let's see. So Robert Alter is telling us to take a look at Exodus 23:28. Let's do that. So, okay. So, ושלחתי את צירעה לפניך. So I shall send the צירעה. We'll go with hornet for now. לפניך וגירשה את החיובי ואת הכנעני ואת החיתי מלפניך. And we'll flush out these nations. Okay, so let's see what Robert Alter has to say on that one. So that's Exodus 23:28. How are we going to do this? Let me open up a new Robert Alter. I think I can do this. New tab to the right. There. Okay. Oh, I'm tired. It's been a long week. Okay. So Exodus 23:28. Let's take a look at his comment there. So he does translate as hornet, but then he leaves a comment. I shall send the hornet before you. There's some question about what is sent. The noun tzira'ah appears in the Bible only 3 times. So here in Exodus 23:28, here in Deuteronomy 7:20, and I don't know where the third one is offhand. All in the context of the conquest of Canaan. The strong consensus of later Hebrew tradition, there's some dissent, is that it refers to a noxious, stinging insect. In that case, the word functions here as a collective noun, rather common biblical usage for animals, and refers to dense swarms of hornets. As an alternative, I would like to propose is that the root is related with consonants reversed to the verb ra'atz, to smash, and that this is a mythological rather than zoological entity, the smasher, which would be strictly parallel or equivalent to my terror at the beginning of verse 27. All right, so let's see what he's saying there. So if we go back to this is Exodus chapter 23, verse 27, Ve'emati ashalach lefanecha. So I will send my fear, my terror, ashalach lefanecha, I will send before you. Ve'hamuti et kol ha'am asher tavo behem. and I will confuse, I will confound, I will, how do they translate it here? Cause confusion among all of the peoples that you come upon whom you come. Unatati et kol oivecha elecha oref. And I will cause, I'll paraphrase this one because it won't work word for word. I will cause all your enemies to turn and run before you. Oref is the back of the neck, so it basically means show the back of their neck, meaning like run away. Verse 28, V'shalachti et tzira bifanecha, v'girsha et ha'chiyuvi et ha'kinani et ha'chiti milefanecha. Okay, so what basically, okay, so I see what Robert Alter's saying. He's actually making a very good point. So first of all, what he's saying is that nobody really knows what the word tzira means, because it only appears 3 times in the entire Tanakh, and it's always in this context of the expelling of the nations that live in the land of Israel. But I think if I understand what he's saying, he's basically saying that these 2 verses are, again, this parallel, in this poetic parallelism. So here, verse 27, we know what the word ema means. It means terror or fear. Terror, I guess would be the correct translation. So he's going to send his terror before you and confuse all of the peoples who are there. So here, if that is in parallel, shalachti et hatzirah. So here, ema is terror. Tzira, we don't know what it is. So what he's saying is that it's not necessarily a hornet. He's offering his own explanation, and he's basically saying that it is in parallel with this word ema, which is terror. So it must be some kind of terror or horror or fear. And then he's relating it to, where is it? Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, he's relating to the word ra'atz, which doesn't appear here, but I think it appears actually back in our verse. Verse here, lo ta'arotz. So what he's saying here, so here he's saying v'gam et hatzirah, which we don't know what it is, but he's suggesting it means some supernatural entity called a smasher. And he's saying that it's, his reason for saying that is he's saying it has the same letters as this verb here, lo ta'arotz. So it's somehow related to this word here, ta'arotz. Ta'arotz means don't fear them or don't be terrified of them. And so here he's saying tzira is, I guess, the supernatural entity that brings terror. He calls it the smasher. And he's saying it's deliberate that here you have tzadi resh ayin, and here you have ayin resh tzadi. So it's the reversal. And therefore, that's how he's coming up with his idea that tzira is actually not a hornet, but is related to this verb, ta'arotz, because they appear near each other and they have the same 3 letters, which are kind of rare letters, I guess you can say, to a certain degree. And so therefore, it must be related to ta'arotz, to fear, and or smash. And so he's calling this the smasher. Okay, it's an interesting take. It's a very unique take. And I like it because I think hornet doesn't make sense to me, to be honest. Because A, we don't see any evidence of this happening later on in the Tanakh. There's no evidence of hornets coming in and seeking out all the hiding people and destroying them. And also, it just doesn't make sense because I don't think hornets would do or be able to do such a thing. So that's his take on it. Even though he does translate it officially as the hornet. Oops, what did I just do? Let's see what I did. He does officially translate it the hornet, but then he sticks to the typically understood translation, but then he renders his own kind of speculation on it. He also mentions over here, so we can close this out now. He also mentions over here the Ibn Ezra's take on that word, which was, oh, I thought he mentioned it here. At any rate, he mentioned that the Ibn Ezra relates it to, so the horn is tzir'ah, relates it to tzara'at, the disease which we usually incorrectly translate as leprosy. So the Ibn Ezra comments that they will send a disease, some kind of skin disease before you to expel the Hivites and the Canaanites and the Hittites. Oh, that's Exodus 23, but same idea, right? So I think that the smasher or skin disease, often they translate it as scale disease, makes a lot more sense to me than the hornet. And I'm not really sure why. I think it's the rabbis that first came up with this idea that sir'ah means hornet. Okay, let's move on. So lo ta'arotz mifnechem ta'arotz. To cause to tremble. And it appears so the BDB translates it as tremble in terror or awe. So let's go with that. So do not tremble before them. Do not tremble in terror before them. Ki Yahweh Elohecha bikirbecha. Because Yahweh, your God, is in your midst, is among you. El Gadol v'Norah, and he, a God who is great and terrible, meaning invokes terror in others. Elohecha et goyim ha'el mifanecha me'at ma'at lo tuchal kalotam maher pen tirbeh alecha hayat ha'sadeh. So nashal, we saw this word. This word appears in Exodus chapter 3 in the burning bush. When, let's just find that for a second. One second. Did I miss it? Here it is. Take your sandals or take your shoe. Take your shoes off your feet. Okay, unwrap or I guess how do they translate here? Yeah, take off. So take your shoes off your feet. Right, unleash your shoes, unfurl your shoes from your feet. So Robert Alter, not Robert Alter, but this word is the same root as here. So when nashal, so in other words, God will remove, like someone removes shoes from their feet. God will remove, Yahweh, your God will remove these nations from before your face. How do they translate nashal here? Drive out. But I think remove is better, right? Again, like a person removes his shoes off his feet. And he will do it ma'at. He'll do it little by little. Lo tuchal kalotam maher. You can't finish them off quickly. Pintirbe alecha hayat hasadeh. Lest the animals, the wild animals, literally the animals of the field, the open field, multiply against you, right? So if you kill all of these Canaanites off, then you're going to get an infestation of wild animals. I guess it's kind of an interesting thought. Maybe, how would that work? Maybe the dead bodies would attract wild animals, or maybe since there are no humans to what's the word to not prune the herd? How do they say it? What's that word again? Not prune. Can't remember the exact word, but to cut down the wild animals, to hunt wild animals, right? To kill off all the wild animals, so they won't have any human predators, so they'll multiply. And then there'll be wild animals all over the land. I don't know, this one never really made sense to me either, because so what if there are wild animals over the land? The Israelites could kill them off. This has always been a weird one for me too, to be honest. We'll get a little commentary on that. Cull the herd, that's the word I was listening to. I was thinking of. Okay, I wonder what Robert Alter says about that one. This is verse 22. So I think this is... That's already 29, so he doesn't say anything about that one. Or he does. This is a comment here. This must be, okay, 14:14. Oh, I'm on the wrong page. Okay, that's what it is. This one has 14:14. Okay, lest the beasts of the field multiply against you, the biblical writers had to confront the repeated contradiction between the promise of a grand conquest of the Canaanite peoples and the historical fact that the conquest was only partial and gradual. Various explanations are offered in Exodus and in Judges, but this is one of the most strained. Well, I agree that it's strained, but again, what Robert Alter is saying is that's from a secular point of view. In other words, he's saying that later on the reality was that the Israelites did not manage to destroy or expel all of the people there, and then they had to come up with the excuses as to why that was a good thing, that some of the people still remained. So they came up with this excuse that it had to be done slowly, because if they do it all at once, there's going to be a lot of wild animals. I don't agree with his secular take on it, but I do agree that it's kind of a strained explanation. I never really got this one, to be honest. It doesn't seem like a big problem to me. So these two things, the tzir'ah with the hornet, always seemed a bit strange to me. And the fact that you can't conquer all of them at once, because then there's going to be a whole bunch of wild animals running around, always seemed also a bit strange to me, because so what? Go kill all the animals. I don't know. All right, verse 23. But God will give them up before you, talking about the nations. With Hamam, Mihuma, Gidolah, Ad, Ish Amdam. And he will, Mihuma is like, they usually translate it as confusion. Let's see how they translate it here. Inflict upon them destruction. I don't like that translation. 23. Let's see what Robert Alter does with that one. Panic them with a great panic. I like that better. So Mihuma. It's like a confusion, panic. I like, that's a good one. And he will inflict them with a great panic. Perfect translation. Dola ad hishamdam. Until they are destroyed. Winatan malchehem biadecha. ועבדת את שמם מתחת השמיים, סמיקולן. לא יתייצב איש בפניך עד השמידך אותם. Okay, ונתן מלכיהם בידיך, he will give their kings into your hand. In other words, you'll capture their kings. I guess kill them or do whatever you want. Although in the case of Agag, Shaul did not do that and got punished for it. V'havalta et shemam, and you shall wipe out their names mitachat shemayim, from under the heavens, meaning the names of these nations, not the names of the kings, the names of the nations. Lo yityatzef ish mifanecha, no person, no man will be able to stand up before you. Ad hishmitra otam, before you verse 25, Pisile Elohem tisrafun ba'esh, they're carved idol gods. Tisrafun ba'esh is a burn in fire, and so again that implies that the pesel, these are gods made carved of wood, shall burn them in fire. Lo tachmod kesef u'zahav alehem, you shall not covet any silver and gold that is upon them. Okay, so maybe there were wood overlaid with silver and gold. Ulakachta lecha, and take it for yourselves, pen ti or kish bo kito avat Yahweh Elohecha hu. Okay, this is an interesting verse. So the carved images of their gods you shall burn in the fire. Yeah, I guess you could say that they're metal, but if you burn them in the fire, maybe they're going to melt. I don't know. I think it's really referring to wood. But then it does say, "Lo tachmod kesef v'zahav elem," do not covet the gold and silver that is upon them. So if it says upon them, then that implies to me again that it's overlaid with silver and gold. We know that basically all of the furniture of the tabernacle of the temple, except for the Ark of the Covenant itself, which was pure gold, and the menorah, which was pure gold, but all of the rest were acacia wood overlaid with gold. Well, in the case of the showbread altar or the showbread table and the incense table, that was acacia wood overlaid with gold. And then in the case of the sacrificial altar out in the courtyard, not in the tent of meeting, but outside in the courtyard, that was acacia wood overlaid with copper. So we do see precedent that it was common to have wood overlaid with some kind of precious metal. So I'm thinking that that's what it means here, because a carved pesel means to carve. You can't really carve into gold and silver. You can't carve into metals. You can carve stone, you can carve wood, but you can't carve silver and gold. And pasal means specifically to carve. I remember I once, when I was in Israel, I think I mentioned before that I Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov, Tan Avior. I taught for a while in the school system in Israel. That was quite an experience. I actually liked it a lot. But I once taught at this very, I don't know, hoity-toity, fancy school. And they had the kids doing pisul. It was, sculpting. Like, oh, what are we doing now? It's period 5. Oh, it's time for sculpting. It was like all these rich kids, these Israeli rich kids, mostly Ashkenazi, mostly from families, like foreign families that had moved to Israel and had lots of money. And so they had their kids in this, very fancy school, this private public school system works a little bit different there, but it was basically a fancy private school, and it was mixed Jews and Arabs. That was interesting. But I remember the kids, sitting there in their little art studio doing pisul, doing, carving statues out of wood. That's one of the activities that they had. Not to imply that they were carving them to as idols to worship, although you never know with these kids. They were pretty left wing. But that's another story. At any rate, so pasal basically means to carve, like you would carve out a statue. Okay, so therefore, the fact that it says pasal, which means to carve, and you can't do that to silver and gold, and the fact that it says lo tachmod kesef v'zahav alehem, do not covet the silver and gold that is upon them, implying that they're not made of silver and gold, but they have silver and gold on them, and the fact that we know that it was common to have wood overlaid with precious metals. The examples we saw some are the furniture in the tabernacle. Putting that all together, I would imagine that these were idols that were carved out of wood, because it also says tisirafun be'esh, you shall burn them in fire, that were overlaid with silver and gold. But you should not covet, you shall not desire, you shall not lust after the silver and gold, and take it for yourself. So don't take, you're going to see all of these carved images. You're going to see them overlaid with silver and gold. You're going to want to just strip off the silver and gold, take it for your own booty, and then just throw the wood, the underlying wood, into the fire. But don't do that. Don't take the silver and gold for yourselves. Okay? Pin tiwakesh bo, lest you be ensnared by it. And tiwakesh is it's the same root that we saw up above, mokesh. Let me find it here, which we translated as a snare or trap. Lest you be snared by it or trapped by it. Tiwakesh. Mokesh here, the mem is just it's a particle that, it's a letter that nounizes. It turns the root into a noun. So this would be an ensnare or a snare, right? But the underlying root, tiwakesh, is, let's see, what is that first letter? Yakash. So the underlying root is yud kuf shin, yakash. To lay a bait or lure. Here the example they give again is pintivakesh. It's our verse 720, Deuteronomy 7:25. So lest you be entrapped by it, or lest you be ensnared by it. Kito avat Yahweh Elohechahu, because this is an abomination to Yahweh your God. What's an abomination to Yahweh your God? Taking the silver, stripping the silver and the gold, coveting the silver and the gold of that are overlaying the wooden idols, stripping off that silver and gold and taking it for yourself. That is an abomination to Yahweh your God. So it's interesting, if you ever do a study on the things that are called abominations in the Torah, it's a really interesting study, because everyone always focuses on to'ava being usually homosexuality, but there are a lot of things in the Torah that are called abomination, including, for instance, using incorrect weights and measures is called an abomination before Yahweh. So that would be an interesting study in and of itself, to study the things that are specifically called an abomination. And this is one of them: stripping the silver and gold off of idols and taking them taking that silver and gold for yourself. Okay, verse 26. Lo tavi to'eva el bitecha wa'ita cherem kamo. So literally, lo tavi to'eva el bitecha, do not bring an abomination to your house. But what it means is, this to'eva, do not bring such abominations into your house. What's the abomination? We see it very clearly here in the previous verse, that the abomination is the silver and gold that you stripped off the idols. So do not bring these abominations into your house, right? Because if you're going to strip them off the idols and take them for yourself, you'll bring them back to your house. Now you've brought parts of idols into your house, okay? Wa'ita cherem kamohu, and turn into a, how can we translate this? Turn into something that is set aside for destruction, like they are. In other words, what the Torah, it's really brilliant, actually. I just, I love the logic here. Okay, if you are supposed to, let's see if we can find, one second. So you're supposed to burn these idols in fire, okay? Meaning you, achrim tachrim otam. We saw these words earlier. You set them aside for destruction, right? They're set aside for total destruction. And if you don't do that, if instead you, and because they're an and if you take the silver and gold for yourself, then that would be an abomination. The silver and gold would be an abomination. And if you bring these abominations into your house, then you're going to be set aside for destruction. So either you set these idols aside for destruction, you totally destroy them together with the silver and gold, or if you take the silver and gold because your eyes start twinkling when you see those shiny, expensive metals, if you take them for yourself, you bring these abominations or bring this abomination to your houses, then instead of those idols being set aside for destruction, you're going to be the one set aside for destruction. You will be set aside for destruction like they are, or like they were meant to be. It's really brilliant logic. It's, very karmic. Shaketz tishaketsu. Shaketz tishaketzenu. So you shall certainly despise them. I'll get back to the word shaketz in a second. Uta'ev tit amenu ki cheremhu. And you shall. All right, let's start with sheketz. Sheketz is something that is supposed to be like, you shall be grossed out by them. You shall be disgusted by them, I think would be a good translation. So you shall be disgusted by them. And again, repetition. Shaketz tishakatzenu. You shall most definitely be, you shall be utterly disgusted by them. Okay, utterly, what's the word? You don't even want to go near them. I will go with disgusted. You shall be utterly disgusted by them. Shakatzenu, literally by it. What is the it that it's referring to? I think probably the silver and gold as a collective. And you shall be absolutely, they shall be absolutely abhorrent to you. That's the same word, to'eva, which is an abomination. So they shall be a complete abomination to you. So they shall be disgusting. They shall be completely disgusting and a complete abomination to you. What? The silver and gold that are stripped off the idols. They shall be disgusting and abominable to you. Don't covet them. Don't see their shiny metals. Don't let your eyes start, glimmering and say, haha, I'll just take them home and no one will notice. You have an example of that in the book of Joshua. And instead, they should be set aside entirely for destruction, including the silver and gold. All of these idols with the silver and gold should be burnt in the fire. Okay? And if you do not set them aside for destruction, then you yourself will be set aside for destruction. That's the logic here. Because they are cherem, they are set aside for destruction. They are slated to be destroyed. Okay. So that's that. That ends Deuteronomy chapter 7. Any questions? Any comments? Okay, I might actually stop here because A, it's getting late, and B, I have a bit of a summer cold. You may have noticed me sniffling and coughing, and I think I need to rest. So I think I'm going to actually end the study here. How long have we been going at it? 3 hours or so? What does it say? What does it say here? Hold on a second. Where's my little time clock? Well, we started at, I think just about 3 hours ago. So maybe that's enough for today. Maybe that's enough for today. I think it is. So, yeah, approximately. No, it's been about 3 hours. Okay, whatever. So, I'm going to end it here. Maybe what I'll do is, you know what I'll do? I'll just read. So we have to go through what? We have to go up to 11. So 11:25. So we have 8, 9, 10. We have 4 more chapters. All right, let me just read chapter 8 with minimal or no commentary, although every time I say that, I end up giving commentary. But I will try to do that. So at least we can get through one more chapter. And then we'll end it after that. Hang on there, Christian, Marius, Simon. I think we're going to go one more. All right. I'll just read through 8. So, okay, Kol miswa asher, and follow along, please, in your favorite translation. Kol miswa asher anochi mitzavacha hayom tishmerun לעשות, למען תחיון, ורביתם, ובאתם, וירשתם את הארץ אשר נשבעה יחווה אל אבותיכם. Verse 2. וזכרת את כל הדרך אשר הוליכך יחווה אלוהיך זה 40 שנה במדבר, למען ענותך לנסותך לדעת את אשר בלבבך, התשמור מצוותיו אם לא. Verse 3. ויענך וירבך ויאכילך את המן אשר לא ידעת ולא ידעון אבותיך, למען הודי אך כי לא על הלחם לבדו יחיה האדם. Man does not live by bread alone. Famous statement, right? כי על כל מושא פי יחווה יחיה האדם. But rather, by all of that which comes out of the mouth of Yahweh shall a man live. Right? God decrees how a man will live. Man does not live by bread alone. שמלתך לא בלטה מעליך, ורגלך לא בצקה. זה 40 שנה. Verse 5. וידעת עם לבבך, כי כאשר יסר איש את בנו יחווה אלוהיך מייסרך. I love this verse. You shall know it in your hearts, or you know in your hearts, that just as a father, I should translate, I don't like the translation, but okay, chastens his son, a father, what would be the word? Gives his son a hard time, punishes his son, maybe would even be better. Just as the father punishes his son, so Yahweh, your God, punishes you. In other words, all of these punishments that God gave to the children of Israel over the past 40 years was really out of love for them, to make them better people, just as a father would do that for his son. ושמעת את מצוות יהוה אלוהיך, ללכת בדרכיו וליראה אותו. Verse 7. כי יהוה אלוהיך מביאך אל ארץ טובה, ארץ נחלי מים, יענות ותאומות, יוסים מבקעה ובהר. Beautiful description of the land of Israel. A good land, a land of, they usually translate this as water courses or water streams, but it means like rivers, wadis, springs, like natural springs, tomot, and wells or deep abysses filled with water. Yotzim b'bikah bahar, that come out of the valley and the mountains. And it's true. If you've ever lived in Israel, there are water springs all over the places. There are wadis and natural springs. I used to regularly go to a place called Lifta, which now unfortunately has been partially destroyed by building, but it was right at the entrance of Jerusalem. I was there basically almost every day for years. It was like my hangout spot. And I would drink right out of the water there. And there were other places. We lived one time in Ein Karim, which is it's officially part of Jerusalem, but it's basically its own village on the outskirts of Jerusalem. And there was a spring there, and I would drink from that spring. There are natural springs all over the land of Israel, and you could drink the water, for the most part, right out of them. Okay, and here we have the 7 species. Eretz chita, se'ora, wagefen, ute'ena, rimon, eretz zeth, shemen, udvash. So a land of, and these are called the 7 species: wheat, barley, grape, date, pomegranates, olive, and honey. And then there's a question as to whether this means bees honey or or date honey, but to me it's clear it means bees honey because we already have, I'm sorry, te'inaz fig. I said date, but we already have the precedence of a land flowing with milk and honey. So we won't get into that controversy now. I'll just go on. Eretz asher lo b'miskenuth tochal ba lechem doch techsar kol ba Eretz asher avonecha barzel me ha rorecha tachzov nechoshet. So you can get copper out of the mountains there. Copper was very, very important at that time. So we had first the Bronze Age, and then afterwards the Iron Age. Bronze is 90% copper and 10% tin. And I can't remember the exact year that the Bronze Age ends and the Iron Age starts, but in the time that the Torah is written, it's still the Bronze Age. And so nechoshet, or copper, is extremely important. That's what weapons were made out of, vessels were made out of. Verse 10, V'chata v'sab'ata u'berachta et Yahweh Elohecha al ha'aretz ha'tova asher natan lach. And so the rabbis take this and say, this is the source for, it's called Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after every meal. But that's not what it means. It means that when you go into the land and you see this great land that God has given you, you're just going to like look around and you're just going to bless God for all of this wonderful land that He's given you. And the rabbis kind of, as usual, take it, turn it, and destroy it by turning it into like some commandment that after every meal you have to say such and such particular prayer. Not what it means at all. Okay, verse 11. Ishamer lecha pen tishkach et Yahweh Elohecha. Levirti shmor mitzvotau umishpatau uchukotau asher anochi mitzavacha hayom. The rabbis also like to make a big deal out of the difference between mitzvah, mishpat, and chok, which is usually translated as commandment, judgment, and law or statute. But I don't think so. I think they're kind of interchangeable, and it's just poetic that they're mentioned all three of them here together. Asher anochi mitzavacha hayom. Verse 12. Pen tochal wisavata ubatim tovim tivneh uyeshavta. 1 second. Right, so this is basically continues here. Verse 13. ובכחר וצמחי ייר ביון וכסף וזהב ירבה לך וכל אשר לך ירבה. So all of these great things are going to happen to you. Or don't. Okay. ישמר לך פן תשכח את יחווה אלוהיך ותשמור מצוותיו. So make sure you don't forget God and stop doing His commandments, lest you eat and be satisfied. You build big houses or great houses and you dwell in them. You have great amounts of cattle and flocks and gold and silver. You have a lot of, and everything you have a lot of. And then weram libavacha, and your heart becomes, literally your heart becomes Ram levavacha. How would you translate this? Literally means your heart goes up or your heart rises up. But what it really means is you kind of become haughty. And you forget Yahweh your God. And you forget Yahweh your God who took you out of the land of Egypt from the house of slaves, from the slave pits. Basically, Beit Avadim, that's what it means, the slave pits. So what the Torah is saying, what Moshe is saying here is, careful that once all of these great, you're going to go into this amazing land that's full of beautiful vegetation, full of beautiful produce that has rivers and water courses, and you can mine copper out of the hills, and you're going to become very wealthy. You're going to have lots of possessions, and just be careful once that happens that you don't forget God and stop doing his mitzvot. Don't forget Yahweh who brought you in here. It's Yahweh, the same Yahweh who saved you from the slave pits of Egypt. And Hamolichacha, Bamidbar Hagadol Wanora, and who led you through the horrible, the great and terrible wilderness. Nachash, Saraf Akrav, with Simon Asher Ein Mayim, Hamotzi Lecha Mayim Mitzur Achalamish, and who did all of these great things for you while you were in the desert. In the wilderness that was full of snakes and serpents and scorpions and thirst. And then he took water from you, right? We saw that. He took water from you out of the Mitzur Chalamish, out of the flint stone. So this is the flint stones right here. Tzura Chalamish. Tzura is a rock. Chalamish is flint. So here you go. Flintstones. Meet the Flintstones. Maybe if they did the Flintstones in Israel, they would call them the Tzur Chalamish family. But that literally means the stone of flint. Man b'midbar gave you the manna, asher lo yeda'un avotecha, that your fathers never knew of. Lema'an anotcha, lema'an nasotcha, lehetivcha be'achritecha. So much to say there, but I just want to skip ahead. This relates to, again, this idea that a father will punish or chastise or give hard times to his son because he wants to make him a better person, and only so that he will have earned his reward in the end, or he will earn the ability to get his own reward in the end through all of the trials and tribulations he went through. And you shall say in your hearts, my own strength and the works of my own hands are what gave me this prosperity. Don't do that. Verse 19. והיה אם שכוח תשכח את יהוה אלוהיך והלכת אחרי אלוהים אחרים ועבדתם והשתחווית להם, האי דותי בכם היום כי אבוד תאבדון. And if you go to foreign gods, I swear to you, I witness to you today, I bring witness to you today that you're going to be destroyed. כגויים אשר יהוה מעביד מפניך just as the nations that Yahweh is going to destroy before you, so you will be destroyed. Eikev, lo. And here we have Eikev, that's the name of our parsha. In the footsteps of the fact, lo tishma'un b'kol Yahweh Elohechem, that you did not listen to the voice of Yahweh, your God. Should we do one more chapter? How long is this one? All right, we'll do one more. Deuteronomy 9. I don't know yet, Christian. I'm working on it. I will let you know. I spoke about it at the beginning of the study. So I will let you know when I work all the details out. Okay, Shema Yisrael. Listen, hear, O Israel. Ata over hayom et Yarden lavo l'reshet goyim גדולים ועצומים ממך, ערים גדולות ובשורות בשמיים. This is hearkening back to what the scouts said. Verse 2, עם גדול ורם, בני ענקים אשר אתה ידעת ואתה שמעת מי יתייצב לפני בני ענק. So this is straight out referring back to the incident of the 12 spies, where they came back and they said, we saw these big fortified cities, and we saw the giants there, we saw the Anakim, and now Moshe is turning it around on them and saying, you're going to take them over. La reshet. You're going to dispossess them. You're going to take over their land. That which the spies were scared of, you, the next generation, because that was 40 years ago, right? That was when the punishment for the 40 years came. 40 years, 40 days, the scout journey lasted, and 40 years was the punishment that Yahweh gave in response to the bad report that the scouts came back with. Verse 3, V'yadata ayom ki Yahweh Elohecha hu ha'over lefanecha ish ochla hu yashmidem hu yachniim lefanecha v'horashtam wa'avalta maher asher diber Yahweh lach. So you're going to dispossess them, you're going to take over their land, and you're going to quickly destroy them. So to me, also, this doesn't make sense, because just in 2 chapters ago, we saw don't do it fast, do it slow, because otherwise the wild animals are going to multiply in the land. But I don't know. We'll dig into that another time. Ad tomar belevavecha, v'adof Yahweh Elohecha otam milefanecha, lemor b'tzid kafi hevi'ani Yahweh lareshet et haaretz hazot, u'b'rishat hagoyim ha'ele Yahweh morisham milfanecha. Don't think that it's because you're so great and they're so evil that God is doing this for you. Verse 5. Lo petit katcha ubiyosher levavacha ata bala reshet et alzam ki berishat hagoyim ha'ele Yahweh Elohecha morisham milfanecha lema'an akim et hadavar asher nishba Yahweh ele la'avotecha la'Avraham Yitzchak u'liYaakov. It's not because you're so righteous that I'm doing this for you. Okay, don't. In other words, all of this, and the last part of the previous chapter was, it's like a warning. Like, you're gonna go into this land. It's a great land. You're getting it. You're gonna take over cities you did not build. You're gonna live in houses that you did not build. You're gonna inherit vineyards that you didn't plant. Okay, that's all gonna be yours, and you're gonna get very rich, and you're gonna get very wealthy. And there's going to be a risk that when this happens, you're going to forget who did all of this for you. It's the same God who saved you from the slave pits of Egypt, who's doing this for you. So be careful, because if you forget it, and you forget Yahweh, and you stop doing his commandments, then you're going to be destroyed in the end, because you've abandoned your God, Yahweh, who's protecting you. So these are all warnings against Israel not to fall into that trap, not to fall into that modality, which is so easy to fall into when you're successful, saying, where's the famous verse in the previous chapter? My strength and the works of my own hand are what gave me all of this prosperity. Don't fall into that trap. That's what all of this is about. So don't think you're inheriting this land because you're so great. That's not the reason, Israel. It's like Yahweh wants to slap them down a little bit, so for their own good, so they don't lose perspective and go off the path and end up getting punished and losing the land, which is exactly what happens in the end, right? So the warnings are very on point, and they were not taken correctly. Hold on, let me turn off the light. The warnings were not adhered to by Israel. They did exactly everything that these verses are trying to warn against. So don't think you're so great, all right? Just take a step back. Hold on, young man. Just chill out. It's not you that's so great, okay? So why did he do it? So Yahweh says the reason he did it is for 2 reasons: because these nations are evil, number 1, and number 2, because I loved your forefathers. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I swore to them something, and I'm going to keep my promise. But don't think you're so great. Okay? It's like a father trying to, keep his son in check before the son gets out of control and does something that's going to end up hurting himself. That's really what's going on here. Verse 6, וידעת כי לא, בצדקתך יהוה אלוהיך נותן לך את הארץ הטובה הזאת, לרשתה כי עם, קשה עורף אתה. This is now, I think, maybe the third or fourth time that this phrase is used. You are a stiff-necked people. Am קשה עורף. Right? And we see that in the desert, how stubborn these people were, how much trouble they gave Yahweh. So much so that he had to send plagues on them a number of times, that he had to delay their entry into the land of Israel for 40 years. They were supposed to go right up to Israel, not straight along the coastal road, because he was afraid they would turn back to Egypt, but they were basically supposed to go around and then straight up to Egypt and to Israel they would have been in within a couple of months. Well, maybe not a couple of months because they were at Sinai for a little while, blah, blah, blah. Within a couple of years. Okay. זכור, אל תשכח את אשר הצבת את יהוה אלוהיך במדבר, למין היום אשר יצאת מארץ מצרים עד בואכם עד המקום הזה. ממרים הייתם עם יהוה. So don't forget all the trouble you gave me. You've been rebels since the day I met you. Verse 8. בחורב הצטפתם את יהוה, ויתענף יהוה בכם. להשמיד אתכם. And when you were on Mount Sinai, you got me so angry, you got Yahweh. Remember, this is Moshe speaking. This is not Moshe transmitting the message of Yahweh. This is really Moshe's own message. You got Yahweh so angry that he wanted to destroy you. So don't think you're so great. Okay, you've been troubled since the day I met you. Ba'aluti, hahara, לקחת לוחות האבנים, לוחות הברית אשר קראת יהוה עמכם, ואשב בהר 40 יום ו40 לילה, לחם לא אכלתי ומים לא שתיתי. So now he's going to relate when he went up to the mountain, what happened when he came down. Moshe, when he went up to the mountain for 40 days. ויתן יהוה אליי את שני לוחות האבנים, כתובים באצבע אלוהים, ועליהם ככל הדברים אשר דיבר יהוה עמכם, בהר מתוך האש ביום הקהל. Yom HaKahal, that's the day that the Israelites assembled at the bottom of Mount Sinai to hear the words of God. That's what that's referring to. ויהי מקץ 40 יום ו40 לילה, נתן יהוה אליי את שני לוחות האבנים, לוחות הברית. And then he gave me the 10 commandments. Verse 12. ויאמר יהוה אליי, קום רד מהר מזה, כי שחט עמך אשר הוצאת ממצרים. סרו מהר מן הדרך אשר ציוויתם, עשו להם מסכה. They made for them, and now this is a molten image, right? Before we saw a pesel, pisile hagoyim, right? Or pisile amim. That was a carved image. Masecha is a molten image. Metal that's melted down and then poured into a mold. That's a masecha. In modern Hebrew, masecha is a mask. Maybe even the word mask comes from the word masecha. I'd have to look that one up. But masecha means a molten image, an image that's poured into a mold. Molten. All of those words related. Molten is related to the word melt, and the word melt is related to the word mold, I believe, because you take the melting and you pour it into a mold, right? Take the melted metal and you pour it into a mold, thing that is there to receive the melted metal. Okay, Masecha, molten metal or image. And the underlying word is nasach, which means to pour out. And for instance, the libation offerings, where wine is brought as a watering offering, wine is brought as an offering, are called the nesech. So masecha is basically a poured molten image, right? Or a poured molten idol, melted metal that's poured into a mold. The underlying word from masecha is nesech, which means to pour. Okay, verse 13. ויאמר יחווה אלי לאמור ראיתי את העם הזה והנה עם קשה עורף הוא, stiff-necked nation. הרף ממני ואשמידם ואמחה את שמם מתחת השמיים ואעשה אותך לרוי עצום ורב ממנו. So this is what God said to Moses at the time. Stand back, I will destroy them, Moses, and I will turn you, Moses, into a new nation. Okay, I think I got to stop here. It's late and I'm tired. All right, one more paragraph. ויפן וארד מן ההר, והר בוער באש, ושני לוחות הברית על שתי ידיי. וירא והנה חטאתם ליהוה אלוהיכם, ועשיתם לכם עגל מסכה, וסעתם מהר מן הדרך אשר ציווה יהוה אתכם. Came down from the mountain and saw the golden calf. ואתפוס בשני הלוחות, ואשליכם מעל שתי ידיי, ואש ברם על עיניכם. And I broke the 2 tablets that had the 10 commandments on them. ואת נפל לפני יהוה כראשונה 40 יום ו40 לילה, לחם לא אכלתי ומים לא שתיתי, על כל חטאתכם אשר חטאתם לעשות הרע בעיני יהוה להכעיסו. So I went up to the mountain again for another 40 days, didn't eat, didn't drink. כי יררתי בני האף והחימה אשר קצף יהוה עליכם להשמיד אתכם, וישמע יהוה אלי גם בפעם ההיא. So God, I feared that God was going to destroy you, but I convinced him otherwise, and he listened to me. ובאחרון התענף יהוה מאוד להשמידו. So this is new information. Remember, Aaron was the one who made the golden calf. We sometimes forget that, but Aaron was the one who saw that Israel was gonna basically riot, and to calm them down, he made this golden calf, which he called Yahweh. He said, "This is Yahweh, your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt." So it was kind of syncretism, I guess you could say. It was worship of Yahweh, but Yahweh now had this form of the golden calf, and it was Aaron who did it to calm them down. And then then Moses finally came down, and Moses said, "What the heck is this?" And Aaron said, "I had no choice. These people were, going to kill me." But now we have new information that Yahweh got very mad at Aaron and thought maybe and was thinking of killing him, thinking of destroying him. But I prayed for Aaron as well. Verse 21. ואת חטאתכם אשר עשיתם את העגל לקחתי ואשרוף אותו באש ואכות אותו תחון היטב עד אשר דק לעפר ואשליך את עפרו אל הנחל היורד מן ההר. So, okay, so first of all, there's a couple of interesting things. So first of all, we see this was a golden calf, right? It was completely molten. There was no wood inside, and nonetheless, Moshe says he burned it in the fire. So we see that even molten or metal can be burnt in fire, not only wood. Then he ground it into dust, basically, and he scattered the dust, or he poured the dust into the river that comes down from the mountain. So that's another interesting piece of information. It's talking about Mount Sinai. So Mount Sinai, wherever it is, has or had a river coming down from it. or a stream, a nachal. Okay. Bita'av era. A second here. Bita'av era ubemasa ubekibrot hata'awa maksivim haitem et Yahweh. So other incidents where Israel pissed off God. ובשלוח יחווה אתכם מקדש ברנע לאמור עלו ורשו את הארץ אשר נתתי לכם. This is now going to be the incident of the spies. ותאמרו את פי יחווה אלוהיכם ולא האמנתם לו ולא שמעתם בקולו. ממרים הייתם עם יחווה מיום דעתי אתכם. You've been rebels against God from the day I knew you. This is Moshe speaking to Israel. ותנפל לפני יחווה את 40 היום, ואת 40 הלילה אשר התנפלתי, כי אמר יחווה להשמיד אתכם. So again, Moshe had to intercede before God destroyed Israel and turned Moshe into a new nation. ותפלל אל יחווה ואומר אדוני יחווה. Here we have Adonai, very, doesn't appear as much. It is not the name of God, it just means my master. It's a title. But the rabbis, of course, whenever they see the word Yahweh, they'll pronounce it as Adonai. Umar Adonai Yahweh, al tashchet amcha v'nachalatcha asher padita begod lecha asher otzeta mitzrayim biyad chazaka. I had to pray, don't destroy this nation that you saved, that you redeemed, and that you took out of Egypt. Zachor la'avdecha, la'Avram, li'Yitzchak, li'Yaakov, and now he brings in the forefathers, right? He's softening them up. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Atifin el koshi amazeh. Don't even pay attention to this annoying people, this difficult people. Wa'al risho wa'el chatato. Just forget about them. Just focus. God, focus. Remember Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, just focus on it. Say it again. Abraham, Isaac, just focus on that, right? Moshe's brilliant. I mean, all of the patriarchs, whenever they argue, and this is really kind of arguing with God or try to convince God of something, they really are brilliant, right? They basically try to take Yahweh's focus off of this nation, this rebellious, stubborn nation that Yahweh is completely fed up with to the point that he wants to destroy him, and kind of divert his focus back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So that'll, to calm him down a little bit. And we spoke about this before as well. Moshe, as did Abraham when he was arguing for saving Sodom and Gomorrah, was always approached with logic, right? Ashofet, what's the exact phrase? Ashofet haaretz lo yaseh mishpat. Should the judge of all the earth not do proper judgment? That's what Abraham says to try to convince God not to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. It failed, but it was a nice try. Logical arguments. And here, the logical argument, not here, but Moshe's recalling the logical argument that he used not against Yahweh, to Yahweh, to try to convince him not to destroy the people of Israel was, if you destroy these people, then Egypt is going to find out about it, and they're going to say that it's because Yahweh, their God, was not strong enough to bring him into the land of Egypt, into the land of Israel, that he killed them off in the desert, right? So Moshe is a genius. He's telling him, forget about this, okay, just forget about these people, just defocus. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, remember them, okay, calm down a little bit, and here's another reason. If you kill these people off, then Egypt is going to find out, and it's going to make you look like a fool. So Moshe is brilliant in his argumentation. I won't say argument. He's not arguing with God, but his logical argumentation. He's acting like a defense lawyer. He's defending his client, Israel. His logical argumentation to the judge or to the jury, jury, and executioner to defend his quote-unquote client, Israel. להביאם אל הארץ אשר דיבר להם ומשנאתו אותם הוצאם להמיתם במדבר. And because you hated them, you brought them out to kill them in the desert. That's what Egypt would say. והם עמך ונחלתך אשר הוצאת בכוחך הגדול בזרועך הנטויה. They're your people. You were the ones who did all that for them. You took them out of Egypt with your strength and your outstretched arm. So now you're going to kill them? Okay, so Moshe really knows. I mean, he knows. You could tell that Moshe and Yahweh are like this, are close, right? They're BFFs, because Moshe knows exactly what to say to Yahweh to calm him down. Okay, with that, we're going to end. Yeah, right, exactly. Alrighty, with this, we're going to end. So we got, not bad, we got to the end of Deuteronomy 9. We have 10 and 11, but I can't. I'm done. I'm wiped out. So I thank you all for joining us for this study. And Be'ezrat Yahweh, with the help of Yahweh, we will see you again next week. This has been Hakham Melech Ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im and Karaite Insights. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov. And with that, we'll go out as we usually do with some nice music.
והיא כמו שיטה את ידה, כדי לתת ולא כדי לקחת, ואני לא האמנתי לילה, באחזות הנחל בסיני, את כל השרינו, פסו לאט בתוך שדרת הספרינו, עם כל האור וכל הפנאי, אשר ראיתי בעיניי, אשר ראיתי בעיניי. בהיאחזות הנחל בסיני, המון דברים יפים ראו עיניי, המון דברים יפים שבגללם רציתי לחבק שם את כולם, ללחוש לפרצופים הנבוכים, הומיד נני במדבר מלון אורחים, הומיד נני במדבר מלון אורחים, עם כל הסלעות והנהליות והזינות, תצא לאט וגם טירת הספרינות, עם כל האור וכל הפנאי, אשר ראיתי לפניי, במו עיניי, במו עיניי.
הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק, על ביתנו התינוקת שמורי לי הטוב, על האש המבוערת, על המים הזכים, על האיש השב הביתה מן המרחקים, על כל אלה, על כל איכות אלי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המר התקווה, השיבני ואשובה אל הארץ הטובה. שמורי לי על זה הבית, על הגן, על החומה, מי יגון מפחד פתע וממלחמה. שמור על המעט שיש לי, על האור ועל הטף, על הפרי שלא הבשיל עוד ושנעשה. על כל אלה, על כל אלה, שמור נא לי, אלי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקר, על המן והמתוק, על נטע הכור נטוע, אל תשכח את התקווה, השיבני ואשובה אל הארץ הטובה. מרשרש אילן ברוח, מרחוק נושר כוכב, משאלו ליבי בחושך מרשמו עכשיו. אנא שמור לי על כל אלה ועל אהובי נפשי, על השקט, על הבכי ועל זה השיר. על כל אלה, על כל אלה, שמור נא לי, אלי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקר, על המן והמתוק, על נטע הכור נטוע, אל תשכח את התקווה, השיבני ואשובה אל הארץ הטובה.
עוד יש מפרש לבן באופק מול ענן שחור כבד, כל שנבקש לו יהי. ואם בחלונות הערב אור נרות החג רועד, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, אנא לו יהי, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, אנא לו יהי, כל שנבקש לו יהי. אם המבשר עומד בדלת, תן מילה טובה בפיו, כל שנבקש לו יהי. אם נפשך למות שואלת, מפריחה ומאסיף, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, אנא לו יהי, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, אנא לו יהי, כל שנבקש לו יהי. מה כל ענות אני שומע, כל שופר וכל תופים, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לא תשמע בתוך כל אלה גם תפילה אחת מפי, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, אנא לו יהי, יהי. בתוך שכונה קטנה מוצלת בית קט עם גג אדום, כל שנבקש לו יהי. זה סוף הקיץ, סוף הדרך, תן להם לשוב הלום, כל שנבקש לו יהי.